Why does Rey keep wearing the same clothes?
40-something years of story and like the good and evil and the fate of the galaxy. I said feet, the feet of the galaxy. But also the fate of the galaxy is hanging in the balance. And your questions, you want to talk about her wardrobe?
Yeah, what is on her arms?
It's like a bandage thing, probably so she can climb and shit. I don't know. I don't live on Jakku.
Welcome to the Crooked Table Podcast, where we discuss the world of film from a fresh angle. And now your host, Robert Yaniz Jr.
Welcome to the Crooked Table Podcast. This is Rob. On this show, we democratize the film criticism conversation by bringing on fans and critics alike to dig into their personal connection to a current or classic release. Usually. However, this is the final installment of our 9-part, really 8-part, because the Force Awakens one was actually more of a repost than it was a new episode, but still, of our ongoing series looking at the Star Wars saga leading up to the Rise of Skywalker. Now we are reached the end of it. We're here at the Rise of Skywalker episode, and I'm going to talk to Kai Yaniz, returning guest, and my wife, about the film in depth, talking about looking back on the franchise leading up to this point, questions we had going in, and how well director J.J. Abrams handled the conclusion of this 42-year saga, ongoing story through 3 trilogies, 1 Disney acquisition, and since it is Christmas Eve as I'm recording this, a partridge in a pear tree. So I really wanted to commemorate this culmination of this ongoing, almost year-long journey through my favorite film franchise by including as many of the guests that I've had talking about this franchise on the podcast as possible. So I reached out to everyone. I wasn't quite able to get a reaction/review from Carrie Jones because I believe she hasn't seen the film yet, but I do want to pass on the fact that her main concern was whether or not Rey and Kylo Ren make out in the film, which Kai and I will talk about that later. No spoilers for the first half of this episode until you hear the trailer audio roughly halfway through. Then after that, it's all in on spoilers. Who Rey is or is not, where everything ends, or how they handle Leia's storyline and all that good stuff. So before we get into the conversation that I had with Kai, I wanted to run through chronologically by the episodes that they appeared in, the kind of mini review / reaction of the previous guests in this series. So back in May, I talked with Kimberly Ream Cook about The Phantom Menace, and I reached out to her about The Rise of Skywalker, and here's what she had to say. The Skywalker saga is complete with the release of The Rise of Skywalker, and it truly is bittersweet. The film is full of plot holes, inconsistencies, and scenes that came out of nowhere. However, the introduction of exciting new characters and the reintroduction of past favorites were a big payoff to loyal Star Wars fans. It was confusing and heartwarming all at the same time. I growled, I laughed, and for the first time at a Star Wars film, I cried. And I can honestly say that I left the theater entertained and satisfied, end quote. So kind of a mixed reaction. I think Kimberly and I are kind of in the same ballpark of enjoying the film but having problems with it. Again, you'll hear much more of my thoughts on that later. The one thing that I really thought was interesting about these reactions from the past guests is how all over the place they were. Kimberly Cook had kind of a mixed reaction. She enjoyed it, but it was more of a middle of the road review. And then Pete Langhelt, who guested on the show back in June to talk about Attack of the Clones, said this: "The Rise of Skywalker is the worst Star Wars movie. The title crawl made me laugh out loud. It was like a 10-year-old competition winner wrote it. Bringing back Palpatine was the dumbest thing ever. The story made no sense. It was abysmal." So definitely, as a film critic, understand where Pete is coming from. As a Star Wars fan, I didn't quite go that strong on it, but I mean, the dead speak. There's a lot of things in the opening crawl to tear apart, and you'll hear my thoughts on the whole Palpatine thing later on. Actually, I think of all the reactions that I was able to collect for this opener, I'm probably most in line with Jackson Smith. He and I talked about Revenge of the Sith ad nauseum back in July, and he and I both think that is a vastly underrated entry in the Star Wars saga. Easily the best of the prequels, and probably one of the most fascinating to think about and talk about, which is kind of strange considering it was written and directed by George Lucas. He of Phantom Menace and Anakin's sand-hating rant in Attack of the Clones. So Jackson said this: "The Rise of Skywalker is a sleepover movie. I envy the 10-year-old boys who are going to see it for the first time this weekend because the movie is insane. Literally, it's everything in the kitchen sink, a miasma of crazy ideas thrown together in no time by J.J. Abrams and company with a Disney-sized gun to their heads. So much about it works, and the movie definitely works better on its own than in relation to the rest of Star Wars. But for me, it's more of a guilty pleasure than a great film. Messy, incoherent, spectacularly bad at times, but also insanely cool, clever, and human in the way the best Star Wars movies are. I hated it, I love it, and I can't wait to watch it over and over and over again." That's pretty much where I was. As of this recording, I've seen the movie twice. And yeah, it has some of the highest highs and some of the lowest lows in this Star Wars franchise. It's definitely something that I'm going to go back and revisit. It's still Star Wars, so in essence, I still love it. But, it's taken objectively, it's clearly not a great film. I think guilty pleasure is where Jackson mentioned there. I think is 100% hitting the nail on the head. You can feel the studio pressure there. So I really loved his reaction specifically. Kim Stock-Foster, who came on in August to talk about A New Hope. She was you went to see A New Hope when it first came out in theaters. And whereas most of the other guests and I were not really around when that film first came out. So she had a lot of interesting things to say about The Rise of Skywalker as well. She says, "I liked it a lot better than the last movie, as did Kelly," that's her husband. "This one, well, it had more heart to it, and I cared more for the characters than I did in the previous movies. It had shades of the original three. There seemed to be more of a connection with the three main characters. The movie also included some humorous parts, which is one of the reasons I think the first three movies were so successful and made such an impact, at least for me. I want the action, but I need to feel connected to the characters, and humor often does that. I think The Rise of Skywalker included a couple of unsuspecting plot lines, which I liked. I think it just had a better feel to the movie than the last couple, however, keeping strong characters in place," end quote. And I agree with a lot of what she says there, too. That's the funny thing, J.J. Abrams recently made a comment in reaction to the very divided reaction from critics and audiences regarding this film. And he's like, if you think it sucks, you're right. If you think it's great, you're right. And that's kind of how I feel reading these. I agree with a lot of what Kim says there. The chemistry between Daisy Ridley and John Boyega and Oscar Isaac is so on point here that by the end of the film, you really feel like you've gone on a journey with these three characters. So I think that's one element that The Rise of Skywalker absolutely gets right, and I think Kim absolutely nails it there. Back in September, I believe, if my math is not off, I talked about The Empire Strikes Back with Candace Kaw, and she actually considers that her favorite movie of all time. So this is what she had to say about The Rise of Skywalker. "I'm mostly just disappointed on how little planning went into these three movies. It needed Johnson and Abrams working together. However, I did have fun while watching The Rise of Skywalker, and I was so happy to finally see Daisy, John, and Oscar have scenes together because they have terrific chemistry. And the lightsaber fights were some of the most engaging in the series because of the emotional weight behind it." She also mentioned to me separately that she was comparing it to the Harry Potter series, or I think maybe even Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones, something like that, about how there was source material to base the stories on, so they already kind of had a template in place. And I agree with her. You can totally feel the lack of a template in the sequel trilogy, and I think this one, the last entry in the trilogy, I think bears the brunt of that most of all. Finally, I reached out to Michael Hinman, and he and I talked about Return of the Jedi back in... where are we now? October, September? I don't even know anymore. I believe he and I talked about it in October. So he says regarding The Rise of Skywalker, "This is probably one of the most science fiction-based Star Wars that has ever been made out of all of them, including the Christmas special, by the way, which are sci-fi in a bad way. I think that's what made this interesting. You're going to always have Star Wars fans no matter what. It could be Oscar-winning performances all around, and you'll have Star Wars fans who hate it. But I think this is something that was really made for fans. If some fans don't realize that in the beginning, they'll realize it over time. It's something that brings together all of the different elements, all these types of cameos from the past, something that had to change from the original plan because of Carrie Fisher's death, but I loved it. It wasn't the simple, straightforward story because it It used to always be that the simple, straightforward story was from Star Wars. The universe is created as complicated, but the stories were simple. But now it's taking into account the audiences are smarter, especially Star Wars audiences, and they're more savvy and can handle these complex storylines, along with a complex universe. And we got that. The whole idea of how they brought back Palpatine, what that would do, that kind of brought everything together. I thought that was great. It was a fun movie to watch. It kept a really good pace, and it's something that I hope when new Star Wars trilogies are created in different parts of the timeline, which is so rich to pull from, that I'm sure they're going to use this film as a model. I think Michael makes a lot of really interesting points there. I mean, you know, what one audience member sees as complex, another one would say convoluted. I kind of end up a little bit in the middle of both of them. But he says about the fan service in this film, I think some of it is warranted. It's the end of the saga, very similar to something like Avengers Endgame, which has been accused of leaning too heavily into fan service. I actually saw this with Michael last night as of this recording for my second viewing, his first. And that was one of the first things he said to me. He's like, this is a fan. It's for the fans. It's the last. It's like basically kind of a victory lap, essentially, like Avengers was. So he makes a lot of really good points there. And as do all of the reactions here from past guests. I think they all make good points, good and bad. There's kind of all of it in this movie, as you'll hear Kaya and I get into. But I really just wanted to take an opportunity to include everyone that had been on the show in the past. You can definitely check out Kimberly Ream Cook on Twitter. Pete Langhalt is a host of the Better Than Robin Hood podcast. Jackson Smith is over on Screen Fever on YouTube. Also check out the Home Experience podcast. Kim Stock Foster, she's kind of everywhere, I guess. She's really more of a personal choice. Candace Kaw, definitely subscribe to Geeky Girl Gab wherever your podcasts are found. And Michael Hinman, you can find him on Alpha Waves Radio. So big thanks to everyone that contributed to this episode. And now we're going to shift into my lengthy conversation about The Rise of Skywalker with my wife, Kai Yaniz. So now we're actually at the episode for the Rise of Skywalker, and I'm bringing back my own personal J.J. Abrams, Kai Yaniz. Welcome back to the Crooked Table podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So I had initially a couple of other guests in mind for this show, but in a way I really kind of like the fact that it came back to Kai because...
Oh, you're just saying that.
I mean, I have to. I'm legally bound. Because the first of these episodes that I really did was the Force Awakens conversation that I reposted a couple months ago that you and I did a two-parter on back in 2015. So, I actually was able to kind of skip that episode to record new material for that. So in a way, it makes sense that it all comes right back around to bringing Kai back for the last one. So.
Oh, how symbolic. I like it.
Yeah, exactly. So I should just say that we are going to do a brief spoiler-free section up front and talk about the franchise as a whole. And then we're going to be full spoilers after the episode, after the clip of the trailer that I will drop in probably, roughly 10 minutes or so. So tell listeners who have somehow been listening to this podcast and not heard you before, even though you're probably the most frequent guest aside from maybe Freddie in the early days.
Do I get a medal?
No spoilers. Sure, we can make that happen. We'll tell people a little bit about who you are. Obviously, you're my wife, but other than that, what you have going on, and then we'll get into your experience with the Star Wars saga.
Well, my name is Kai Yaniz, and as Rob has mentioned, I'm his wife, and I've been on the podcast quite a bit, and I'm a big supporter and probably Rob's number one fan, maybe number two. If we include his mom, my dad.
My daughter. Our daughter?
Yeah. Our daughter, yeah. She's a big fan of your podcasts. So I am working on my second book in a maybe trilogy the first book was called Becoming Version 2.0, and that was about my travels to China and Australia and how that enhanced my life. And now I'm writing Becoming Version 3.0, which is about how having a child has transformed and enhanced my life. Now, she's only 3, but a lot of transformation has happened during that time. So I've been writing that. and hoping that I'll finish it at some point. And I also have a YouTube channel that I'd call Be Bold, Be Brave, but it's really under my name, Yaniz, and that's just about having inspiring videos once a week about being acting in state of courage, how to be a good friend, how to communicate. I've been it's lapsed a little bit because I've been busy with some other things and trying to do a reset. Rob has shown me that can work out, but that's kind of the things I have going on. Other than working my full-time job and just living life keeps me busy.
It's also for us personally, I think this kind of bookending not only the Avengers Endgame episode we did in April, which I really liked, that this is because we're doing again. What are you looking at me all weird?
The last time I was on?
No, I don't think so, because we did the best of 99.
Oh,
also,
yeah, that's right.
like a couple months ago. But this is also this episode is kind of a companion piece to that, because it's again kind of the end of a big story that we're sitting down in our dining room having a bottle of wine.
Malbec from Argentina.
That's right. We'll get more into the brand that I specifically selected for a facetious purpose. But also because bookending our Force Awakens conversation before we even had a daughter or anything, before you weren't even pregnant yet. And now we have a 3-year-old, and it's kind of like, wow, this trilogy's ended and our lives have changed so much just in the last 4 years. That's kind of crazy how that happens.
Absolutely true.
So yeah, really happy to have Kai back on for those reasons. I also want to take this opportunity to thank all the previous guests that I've had in this series. I want to thank Kimberly Ream Cook. I want to thank Pete Langhelt. I want to thank Jackson Smith, Kim Foster, Candace Kaw, Michael Hinman. Well, you were in Force Awakens, and Carrie Jones for joining me to talk about these other films, the previous films in the franchise. I wish we could have everyone on sort of round table style to kind of weigh in on this. So also I wanted to point out, just because we have covered all the Star Wars movies, we still haven't covered Rogue One and Solo. So I'm sure at some point someone will want to talk about those, and then we can fill those in.
I don't think it will be me.
No, it won't be you, because this will probably be the last time I'll make you go on the podcast to talk about Star Wars, at least for a good while. So I'm sure that will happen at some point. So before we get into spoiler-filled goodness on the actual movie, or actually even the spoiler-free stuff, I've been asking everybody in this series, and you probably talked about it on the Force Awakens episode, but just for the sake of completionism, what is your experience / relationship with the Star Wars saga prior to this? Like, when did you first see any of the movies and stuff like that? I'm assuming you had some exposure to them before I came around.
Yes, I did have some exposure. Gosh, I wish I could just take that snippet that we talked about on The Force Awakens.
Well, people can go back and listen to them, but now they're on this one.
I actually did. It was right after I listened to...
well, you can do an abbreviated version if you want.
The one with Carrie, then the one that The Force Awakens popped up. And I was like, I like to listen to myself.
Yeah,
I didn't hear
exactly.
my voice. So I listened to, I think, a lot of it, and then I stopped because I'm like, okay, this kind of... I think I listened to this before, and this kind of feels like kind of a waste of your time. So
it's never a waste of your time with the Crooked Table podcast. What are you trying to do to me?
Oh, you could edit that out. So my exposure to Star Wars was watching Spaceballs when I was a kid, and I'm like, this is funny. And me and my sister also had these action figures, these Star Wars action figures. So we had Han Solo, Princess Leia, and I think, no, we did not. Okay, with Luke Skywalker and like the snow garb.
Oh, from Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, and Princess Leia action figures. And then we actually had a Han Solo Barbie doll, which now that we have fast forward 4 years, my sister used to be the holder of the Barbie dolls because she was, saving them for when she had a daughter. Well, she did not have a daughter. And when our daughter was born, she gave me the big bin full of Barbies. And she kept the action figures. She's like, oh, no, I think the boys, she had 2 boys. I think the boys will want these. I'm not going to part with those. I'm like, okay. But what she didn't know is that she parted with the Han Solo Barbie doll.
So wait, we have it?
We have it.
Oh, cool.
Yes.
I didn't even know that.
But he is
I forgot
missing
that.
part of his foot.
Aw.
Because me and my sister were not like the most kind. Well, actually we were. We didn't rip off their heads.
Well,
or
I've
anything.
talked about
but
on this.
he is missing a foot.
I've talked on this podcast before, I think at some point, that Freddy broke a lot of my action figures, like the old school Masters of the Universe with the rubber band holding the legs in there and everything. The old like 80s design of action figures, like a lot of my people fell by the wayside. And we had a lot of the small Star Wars action figures, the classic like 3 and 3/4 inches, I think. And I think Freddy either has them or got rid of them or whatever. But
yeah, I think I was nice to our toys because Zaya influenced me to be nice to them. And we had our moments. I think one doll actually ended up getting its head shaved. But I don't know if that was us or our friend. But anyway, so that was like my first foray into Star Wars. And my parents didn't really talk about Star Wars, so we have no idea where we got them from. But I think I did
probably
know
a gift from somebody or something like that.
Yeah, but I knew they were from, or maybe our friends' houses. We just took them.
Wow.
Or maybe
what happened
gave them
what
to
happened
us
to
or
Zaya,
something like that.
Zaya's influence? She's like, let's just steal it, guys.
But I knew that her name was Princess Leia, and in fact, I would used to call Zaya Princess Zaya.
I don't feel like Zaya would mind that though.
But I said it sarcastically. I'm like, okay, Princess Zaya. So she did not like that. So then
She should have owned it and be like, you're goddamn right, I'm Princess Zaya.
we also used to call it Zayaland instead
nice.
of New Zealand. But anyway, so then my mom went out with a guy, had a boyfriend who had the original trilogy on VHS. And this was, of course, before the prequels came out and before they even remastered the original trilogy.
Oh, so it wasn't the video boxes that have like Vader's face.
It was like
half
96, 97.
Oh, so it was probably like it probably was the remastered VHS, but before they changed before the special editions or anything.
Right. Okay, yeah.
Okay, because like in 95, again, I'm getting really geeky here, but in 95 they released the trilogy on video VHS, which was like the cover for the original movie was like half of Darth Vader's face, and then half of a stormtrooper, and then like half of Yoda's face, and that was like the
that
box
was
art.
it. Yeah, maybe
I think it was probably those.
Yeah. So I watched and I knew about the Princess Leia and Jabba the Hutt scene.
Slave Leia.
Yeah, I knew about that because that's like so famous in pop culture. I sort of remember it from Friends.
Right.
I'm like, oh, okay. So I watched all three of them, and I don't know. I wasn't that impressed. I think it's also because I was young and I was like, okay, I don't get it.
Right.
And I was actually kind of bored by the third one. I don't even know how much I remembered the third one other than the Slave Leia scene.
Well, hopefully later in this podcast you won't say I was actually kind of bored by the third one.
So and then when I watching Spaceballs again, I was like, wow.
Star Wars copied Spaceballs.
Yeah. Originally, I thought that Star Wars copied Spaceballs. In reality, Spaceballs had copied Star Wars. I didn't even realize it was a parody because Mel Brooks always does his own thing, and
yeah, Spaceballs was. I think we've talked about this. Now we're like really in the 2015 conversation all over again. But I think Spaceballs was kind of designed to be kind of a bit standalone as well. Like
yeah, he's good at that. But so I actually only before you came around and before The Force Awakens, I had only seen one Star Wars movie in the movie theater, and that was Revenge of the Sith.
Oh, okay.
So I was kind of
when you saw,
sort of lost.
I love that this is not intentional, but you just mentioned I was sort of bored by the third one, Return of the Jedi, and now you're talking about Revenge of the Sith, the previous two third installments of the last two Star Wars trilogies. So when you saw Revenge of the Sith, you had no context for the rest. You're like, who the hell is this Anakin guy? What's going on?
Well, I knew because
people talked about it.
People talked about it, yeah. And
did you see it on VHS or TV or anything?
No,
because you weren't interested. So you're like,
Yeah, so I knew about Jar Jar Binks and how he was irritating people.
Right.
I knew that.
And borderline, well, not even borderline, but racist, basically, too.
Yeah, and I knew that Anakin was Darth Vader because I'm not dumb.
Well, I mean, it wasn't exactly a mystery at that point for anybody that, yeah.
So I didn't understand what the deal was with Queen Amidala and Padme. Like, I was very confused. And
you didn't understand that they were the same person? Did I just reveal that to you just now?
No, it's like I don't know. I see that part. I didn't know what was going on. I'm like, why does she have two different names? Why does she have two different names again?
Padme is her first name, and Amidala, I think, is her last name, kind of. But they also have her Padme Nayberry, is on the toys and stuff. I don't know if that was just a misdirect. Anyway,
I'm like, why is
we're
Natalie
super
Portman?
off topic.
Natalie Portman, she's 19 and she's playing the queen? What the heck?
She was elected. They're elected officials, the queen. Anyway, we're like way off of the Rise of Skywalker. So obviously people want to hear your in-depth thoughts on the Force Awakens. They can listen to that episode. So what have your thoughts been overall on this particular trilogy, the first Star Wars trilogy that you've seen every installment in theaters as they were happening because you're married to somebody who's obsessed with Star Wars?
Who didn't tell me until
Who didn't tell you?
right.
Well, I didn't. It was no. You got to remember, 2015, there hadn't been any Star Wars movies for 10 years. I kind of watched Clone Wars, but not really. I still haven't only seen like the first season or so.
No, it was like 2012 that I realized that you were into Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like a year after we got together.
Yeah. Okay, well,
Because
then I was like,
Lucasfilm.
"What? Did you hear the news? Star Wars?" You're like, "What do you care?" And I'm like, "It's amazing." I didn't tell you. Well, because I'm a little place setting as well. I didn't see, and people that are listening to this series have heard me say this before, so I'll make it very quick. I didn't see the original trilogy until right before the special editions came out. Saw them on VHS before they were tampered with, like the one time. I mean, I had seen them as a kid here and there, but I never really got into it because my parents weren't really into Star Wars either. Saw the special editions as they came out, and that's when Freddie and I got really into the toys and all that stuff. The lightsabers that I have upstairs. I have the lightsaber actually in the other room that our daughter is trying to now steal from me, which I Instagrammed a picture of. So I was really big into the special editions, or really the versions of those movies that I'm more familiar with. And I know that sounds sacrilegious for a lot of purists.
And those are the ones you showed me.
Yeah, and those are the ones I showed you. Those are the ones that's on the Blu-ray. I mean, actually, the Blu-ray even has had even more changes since then. So I grew up with the prequel movies a lot. I used to put on episode 1 and episode 2, and this sounds terrible, but I mean it as a comfort thing. I used to put it on like as my, when I called as a kid, my family, and I called like our night movie. We put that on as like to go to sleep. Like, not because it's boring, but like, oh, I love this movie. I watch it and I go to sleep and I fall asleep during it. It was like a comfort blanket thing, the first 2 movies on VHS. So I've seen the prequels a million times, probably similarly, if not slightly more than the original trilogy.
So how come when you showed me the prequels, you didn't end up falling asleep?
That's a good point. You would think it would be some kind of like psychosomatic thing at this point. Oh, the opening crawl. And I've talked on this podcast about the prequels. I have major issues with episodes 1 and 2. I think 3 is unfairly maligned and probably one of the better Star Wars movies.
I remember you saying that in the Revenge of the Star Wars podcast.
Well, Jackson and I, that's the thing. Jackson and I are on very much the same page there. So it was basically like the two of us going off on how much we love Revenge of the Sith for 2 hours. And I was like, at the end of it, he was like, "Are you going to cut any of this down, split it in half?" I was like, "Nah, I like it as is. I think we're good." And
how long is the movie?
The movie's like 2 hours and maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes. So it was pretty close. But most Star Wars movies lately have been around there. So what were your thoughts briefly on The Last Jedi, and what questions and or, what did you have, what were you expecting from The Rise of Skywalker based off of The Last Jedi?
I actually thought that Rose wasn't going to play a very big part at all. I think that...
then that was met.
Because the backlash that she received because of her being a woman and being Asian, I'm just like, yeah, I feel like Disney will still, they're still going to put her in the films, but they're not going to have her do very much.
They're paying lip service by being like, she's in there, in the background, off to the side in the shadows. I'm like, Jesus.
So that's disappointing.
You know why it's especially disappointing? Kelly Marie Tran seems like the sweetest person of all time. Like, if you watch any interview with her, she seems like she's a really, really nice person, a really wonderful actress, and like she's really good in that movie. We talked about it because we watched Last Jedi again recently, right? But even though I did the podcast with Carrie, I watched it again like a couple of days, like the day before we saw The Rise of Skywalker, and yeah, I think she's really good in that movie. I think she's a very earnest character, and I think a lot of people are just not into that, I guess, for whatever reason. So you enjoyed The Last Jedi, like you were a fan of it like I am, or did you see it as a bit of a letdown after The Force Awakens?
Oh no, I liked it. Yeah, it's like I said, I think I said this in the Force Awakens podcast. Maybe didn't get this far, but I feel like I agree with the criticism that people gave it, where it was basically the same as A New Hope. It was
very much so. It's part remake in my opinion.
So I like with The Last Jedi, they did different things with it. And I really like the scene with Luke Skywalker, and mind you, I also just saw this recently because Rob was playing in the background, like on Wednesday or
It's
something.
the fine print for every opinion Kai has on Star Wars is like, and mind you, I can't escape this fucking franchise even if I tried. So keep that in mind. We're not watching it by choice. I'm not a geek like the person sitting across from me. That's okay. I'll own that.
It's okay. Where Luke Skywalker did, he was like astral projecting, right? Is that what they call it?
I mean, force projection. Everything is
okay.
all the force abilities, like force push, force jump, force heat.
Well, Force's Endgame is all about quantum.
I almost said a spoiler.
So
yeah, everything's quantum, whatever. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So where he was force projecting, that scene was pretty awesome.
The music too.
Yeah, and I like going to movie theaters where there's a lot of sounds and excitement from the audience, and so that movie had a lot of that, and I liked it. I just liked that The Last Jedi did what no one expected it to do. That in the beginning of the movie, Rey goes up to Luke and gives him his lightsaber, and we all assumed that he'd be just so excited to get that lightsaber, and that's how you thought about it at the end of Force Awakens. That's how you thought about it at the beginning of the movie. And then he gets it and he throws it in the ocean. Thought that was pretty cool. And I have seen a couple. Okay, fine. Maybe I've only seen one Rian Johnson movie, Looper. I think is the only one I've seen.
I still have to show you the Brothers Bloom and you saw Knives Out.
Oh yes, well that's okay, right. Yes, I've seen Knives Out too. So Rian Johnson kind of already has like an edgy screenwriting.
Right. Well, Rian Johnson, and Rian Johnson basically does deconstructions of every genre he touches. So like Brick is a film noir, kind of, but like breaking down all the fundamental pieces that make that genre. And then Brothers Bloom is kind of like a con man / heist movie. Looper is a time travel movie, but not really. And then, Knives Out is sort of his deconstruction of a murder mystery. And this was his deconstruction of kind of a Star Wars movie. What is a Star Wars movie really? What can it be? What is it built on? And what should we? Let's question the foundation that this franchise is built on. And I think that pissed off a lot of people, obviously. So what do you make of the backlash for The Last Jedi and going into Rise of Skywalker? What were you kind of expecting it to be more like Last Jedi, more like Force Awakens, or did the movie successfully split the difference?
Well, I think I'm going to agree with what both you and Carrie said about The Last Jedi, that I feel like people wanted to they were going to hate on it regardless. Like, it's like it either had to be exactly the same, like Force Awakens, or it was going to be completely different. And I feel like they were going to not like it either way, because, it's just, and I actually know fewer people that don't like that movie than do like that movie. Mm-hmm. So that's promising. But I just think that people just like want to complain, and isn't that kind of what was going on with the Rise of Skywalker? That there were 56% of Rotten Tomatoes between critics and users are just like, because they just want to freaking hate. And I'm like, are you a Star Wars fan, or are you just part of that now generation that, and I'm also including myself in here, that generation that just wants to piss on, just piss on everything.
You can curse on here, Kai. You know that. You can say bitch
I'm
about
a
stuff.
mom now.
She's not listening right now. No, and I said to you right after we came out of the movie, we went to get frozen yogurt, and I was saying, and I was telling you, I'm like, it's something about now society, like politically, like everybody's like, oh, you're a Democrat or a Republican or snowflakes and bullshit. And it's now leaked into my entertainment. And it's like, keep your politics. Like, I don't mind having political messages and having, movies that say something. I'm fine with that. But it's like now everybody's like, what? You didn't love this movie? Then you're a terror. You're an asshole because you didn't like the fucking same Star Wars. Who cares? It's a movie, guys. It's ultimately, this is all just like entertainment. It's fun stuff. It's important to some of us. Like Star Wars is important to me, but it's not like I'm not going to kill somebody because he doesn't like the same Star Wars the way I like it or whatever. It's like, that's ridiculous that people are this kind of extremism. And
I think that's also because of political climate too. People are very anxious, stressed out, kind of antagonistic.
Right.
So it is leaking into to entertainment and
pretty much everything.
Yeah,
like every
our entire way of life.
So And this movie, I think, suffers because of this trilogy. And this is not something that I'm coming up with. And, this is something that has been well documented by a lot of critics. But critics are kind of hating on this movie, probably in part because they loved The Last Jedi, because it did everything you said. It challenged the audiences, and it questioned the franchise, and they delivered.
I didn't say those things.
You
did.
said some of that, though. It delivered something different. It zigged instead of zagged, where Force Awakens was like, this? We're going to have this mentor character, and he's not going to make it, and there's going to be a giant round, not a moon style, planet-destroying machine, and
what do they call it?
They call it Starkiller Base, which is a reference because in the original script, again, geeky side note, in the original script, his name is Luke Starkiller, not Skywalker, and he changed it to Skywalker. But they were like, hey, we'll call it Starkiller Base because it's like a nod to an earlier version of the screenplay and stuff. Anyway, so this movie, I think, suffers because of that. I actually just wrote an article for cheatsheet.com where you can read a lot of the things I have to say about Star Wars and superheroes and random things related to cinema. Oh God, so much Joker. And I'm not even that big a fan of Joker, honestly. It's kind of like, a Joker. Where I said the real reason why The Rise of Skywalker is the worst installment in this trilogy, which I stand by. I don't think I still like it, which we'll get into. But I'd have a lot of issues with it. And the problem is because Force Awakens was reintroducing the saga, and in doing so was retreading some of the same ground to be like, hey, remember Star Wars? Let's bring Star Wars. Let's dust off this story that we really hadn't continued since 1983.
Was it also Star Trek too?
What about Star Trek?
Because
J.J. Abrams did those also.
And
first.
isn't that why people said that Star Trek felt a lot like Star Wars?
Yeah, I think J.J. Abrams was like, hey, I can make a Star Wars movie, watch. And they're like, wait, this is not Star Wars. He's like, oh, but now I got Star Wars, my Star Trek. And he pieced out. And I do like his Star Trek movies as well. All three of them. The third one, which I think he still produced. But The Force Awakens was just like dusting off the franchise. So, they're going to have some of those legacy sequel, or actually our buddies at Jackson and Adam at Screen Fever called it requel in one of their video essays. So it's going to have some of that. But then The Last Jedi was a progression from that into some new territory. And then this movie trying to please the people that love The Force Awakens for being samey. And let's be honest, that's kind of what it is, even though I love that movie too.
Even though I think...
Yeah, go ahead.
I think Rey, though, she's different.
Right.
Like, she wasn't Luke Skywalker.
No, but she's also a person living on a sand planet without, like, mysteries about her, like, identity, family /
she didn't
origins.
have family. At least Luke Skywalker.
Well, she had family. She was dropped by somebody.
And an uncle. She had nobody.
Right. She was a scavenger.
Yeah, but she was not... I guess she was actually more like Princess Leia, like she was, or General Leia. She was not a damsel. And you have Finn that's like, oh, I gotta go save her. And he's still like that. Like he's still obsessed with Rey. And he still looks at her like that, and that he needs to save her. And meanwhile, I'm like,
I love that moment.
Kicking ass all over the place.
We should eventually get to the Rise of Skywalker, but I love that moment in The Force Awakens where they're being chased or whatever, and they like fall down, and she goes to grab his hand and help him up, and he's like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Yeah." She's like, I got this. I've been doing this my whole life, which is why I don't understand the whole bullshit thing that all the like toxic fans or whatever people are like, she's a Mary Sue. She's just like magically good at everything. I'm like, she's like what 20? She's supposed to be more or less early 20s. She's been living on her own since she was like 6 years old or something. She's learned to fend for herself. So granted, she's gonna know how to fight a little bit. She's gonna be resourceful. She may have picked up how to fly a ship here and there a little bit. So it's like, I don't understand why everybody's like, I don't get how she could be so good at stuff. Plus, in this movie, we get more of her origin, and it explains if you want to go for that. Which, to get back on track, that's the thing. This movie's trying to please the people that love The Force Awakens and also the people that love The Last Jedi. And in doing so, it kind of betrays both previous movies a little bit by trying to be both. It has, like, and I wrote this in the article, it has kind of a weird, like, identity crisis. I compared it in the article to being like the child stuck between two argumentative parents, and ultimately, you're trying to mediate both sides. Ultimately, everybody might compromise, but nobody will really be happy in the end. It's just kind of like what this feels like. It's trying to keep elements of both of those previous two movies, and in doing so, doesn't really become its own movie. It's just kind of like, and then there you go, it's done. And there are a lot of things about it I like, but I feel like it undermines some of the Last Jedi's whole point in that you could be anyone, because they have to kind of quasi-retcon some of the elements in here regarding Snoke, regarding Rey's parentage, regarding, you know, where this is all heading, the Kylo Ren story and all that. So, yeah, so...
and also wanting to get closure.
Right.
Which
for
Endgame went through, too.
Right. For this trilogy, but also the whole all 9.
Yeah.
And I think Endgame does that infinitely more successfully than this movie does. I think it helps that it's 3 hours. I think it helps that they had a little more of a plan in place here. It's pretty clear over the last couple of years that Lucasfilm and the people there were just like, I don't know, maybe this happens. Who the hell knows? We do know that this was supposed to be Carrie Fisher's movie, and that sadly didn't happen. We'll get into exactly how they work around that and whether or not it works. And there was a lot of behind-the-scenes drama on this movie, too. Colin Trevorrow, who did Jurassic World, was supposed to do this one and then left for creative differences. Soon after, I think, Carrie Fisher's passing.
Yeah, they talked about that in the trivia, IMDb. I love to read the trivia on IMDb after every single movie that we watch, even if I didn't even like it.
And the rumors are that his pitch was heavily focused on Leia, and once they had to kind of scale back her role, that he didn't really gel with what they wanted to do or whatever.
And my point with that was like, well, geez, sounds like he's not a very creative person then. If that was his one idea and it didn't work out.
A lot of people don't like Colin Trevorrow. I mean, I listen to the Blank Check podcast a lot, and they love to rip into Colin Trevorrow, you know. And Jurassic World it's a fun movie. It's, again, kind of a requel thing where it's kind of very similar to Jurassic Park in a lot of senses. I don't hate his movies as much as a lot of people do. I don't necessarily want him to. I wouldn't necessarily.
What else did he do?
He did a movie called Safety Not Guaranteed, and he did a movie called The Book of Henry that everybody apparently hates. I've never seen it.
Wow.
But Screen Fever they had the Home Experience podcast. They talked about that. So if you want to hear their thoughts on that, check that out. Jackson and Adam there, and it's I wouldn't necessarily choose him to be the closer of this trilogy. But at the same time, bringing back J.J. Abrams, obviously he's going to lean more towards Force Awakens. He'd be like, all right, cool, yeah. I did this story in Force Awakens, Ryan did his own thing, but now we're going to go back to what I wanted to do, pretty much, is how this feels a little bit. It's very whiplashy watching this as a trilogy.
Why couldn't they have gotten another person?
Well, actually,
director?
I talked, Adam and I were, Adam Barnard, who's been on the show before, and we'll, as they like to say on Blank Check, past and future guest, Adam Barnard, he and I were going back and forth, and we were speculating that it's because they had this deadline, they had this release date, and there's a lot involved in doing a Star Wars movie. Obviously, the script has to be written, but then there's like pre-production, visual effects, blah blah blah, all that. There's a long post-production process involved with everything that in order to get all the visuals and stuff in place. So I think that it wouldn't have been enough of a turnaround for them to get this out by December 2019 is what I think it was. So I think their options were Abrams or Johnson. And I think Johnson's like, no, I'm doing Knives Out. I want to do my own thing. After all the shit he got for Last Jedi, I wouldn't blame him if he walked away from the trilogy he's supposed to still possibly maybe be doing. It's unclear if that's really happening. He was offered a Star Wars trilogy before Last Jedi even came out. They were like, we're so happy with what you did. This was awesome. Come and make another trilogy. He's like, okay. And they announced it. But since then, it's been unclear if it's happening or not really happening because nothing official has been set in stone.
Oh, like another Star Wars trilogy?
Like not related to any of these, but like his own thing. Like set in a different period or with different characters, all that stuff. Which I'm all about that as a person who thinks The Last Jedi is essentially the second best Star Wars movie of all time, behind Empire Strikes Back. I think that would be awesome. But looking at the way this movie kind of it takes at least a half a step or two back from The Last Jedi. I wonder if they really want that now because he's such a divisive figure to this fandom. So anyway,
is it possible that those that don't like The Last Jedi are the silent minority or the vocal minority? The vocal minority.
I mean, it still made over $1 billion at the box office, and it still has like 98% on Rotten Tomatoes. So critics liked it. People went to see it. Whether they liked it or not is remains to be, I guess is up for debate.
Or they like the people that complain online, but then to their to other people, to their face and to their friends, like, I loved it.
I mean, I guess
I watched it yesterday.
I'm all the time on online saying how much I literally loved it. So So that's, this movie has a little bit of an issue with that. It is
stuff.
I don't like to hate stuff though.
Who are these people that watch the Kardashians?
Not me.
Hate watch, right? That's like.
Well, that's kind of me with Fuller House.
That's the society that we're in now.
Fernando rules. What?
Is hate watching.
Yeah.
Like you said when we were leaving the movie theater.
Right. But see, I'm the opposite. Like, you'll hear me say, I've already started saying negative things about The Rise of Skywalker. And I'm sure I'll say a whole lot more in this episode. But at the end of the day, I like the movie. I'm excited. I'm going to see it. We're recording this on Saturday after the movie came out. I'm seeing it again on Monday with friends. So I'm going to take my parents to see it. I'll probably see it at least 3 or 4 times in theaters and then buy it on Blu-ray and watch it a lot at home and introduce it to our daughter when she's age appropriate and all that other stuff, along with the rest of the saga.
She's a little resentful that she wasn't able to go to this.
Yeah, but this, like I said, since it's going to be probably at least 2 or 3 years until the next movie, she'll be more age appropriate to take to a Star Wars movie in theaters.
Yeah, and before we get too much into it, it was like by the first scene we realized, yep, this is not for children.
This one's really, I don't know if it's the darkest Star Wars movie, but it's up there. It's Revenge of the Sith.
Even the cinematography
and maybe,
is dark.
Yeah, it's also it's spooky, and like we'll get into the spoilers, not really, because it's in the trailers and everything. Palpatine stuff, and how that's kind of intense. Like I can't imagine a 3-year-old sitting there. That would like traumatize her.
She had a hard time seeing through Jumanji 2.
Yeah, well, technically Jumanji 3. If we're gonna be
or 4.
It's
don't count.
I heard people say about
Zathura.
Zathura, yeah. Which is more of a companion piece than an actual Jumanji movie. But now we're way off topic again. Jumanji, the next level is fine. It's fun. I don't know. It's not as good as Welcome to the Jungle, in my opinion. But that's a side note. So this is, of course, the last Skywalker saga film, the last John Williams score, which I have ordered from Amazon. It hasn't gotten here yet. And I'm a big score listener.
And he's the one that passed away?
John Williams? No, hey,
sorry.
bite your tongue.
Oh, was that Hans Zimmer?
No, bite your tongue. What are you doing? These are like the best composers of all time that you're like...
Who was the one?
Which one? Johann Johansson?
No, who's the one that passed away recently?
He did. Johann Johansson passed away.
I don't know him.
Well, I don't know. He's another composer. I don't know which one... I don't know what you're talking about.
Was he the guy, the Titanic guy?
Oh, James Horner.
Was he the one?
Yes, he passed away.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's my only...
Yeah, that's the only one you know. You're like, that's the only sound score. Did you even have the Titanic soundtrack? No, probably. You did?
Both. The soundtrack and the score.
Well, isn't there there's the two. Anyway, back to Titanic is the other one. So, before we get into this, also this was directed by J.J. Abrams, obviously. Co-written by Abrams and Chris Terrio, who a lot of people are pointing fingers at because he was one of the writers on Batman v Superman. Dawn of Justice. So I've even heard, I think on the Slash Filmcast, they talked about the Slash Filmcast, the whole Leia moment with Kylo Ren, which I don't want to get into spoilers. You know what I'm talking about? They said that I was very kind of Martha-esque. And I was like, oh man, and it's the same guy too. That's not a good look, Star Wars. So before we get into this, do you think it was a good idea, one, to bring J.J. Abrams back, given that they needed somebody kind of quick? And 2, do you think it's a good idea that this is the last Skywalker saga movie? And then we'll finally get into spoilers and all that good stuff.
I mean, obviously J.J. Abrams could do more with movies than I ever could.
Right,
and
of course.
It's not like his movies are terrible. They're all fun. But it's just... And I understand the reasoning that they needed someone quickly. But I think it was just kind of lazy of them. And
I know this is a podcast, so I just wanted to let people know I pointed to you in agreement. I was like, yep.
And I think it would have been more fun if they got someone else. And it's not as if they don't have people lining up outside the door to go be a director of a Star Wars movie.
Right.
It's not like they're at a loss for this. I mean, geez, even call Joss Whedon or something. Joss Whedon.
After Justice League, I don't think anybody wants to call Joss Whedon. Even though that wasn't 100% his fault either.
I'm surprised.
That was another complicated situation.
Thank goodness Zack Snyder. Oh, goodness.
I actually like Watchmen and Man of Steel. But
whatever.
But no, I agree with you. It's kind of unimaginative.
And I just think he is boring. Like, he doesn't do... anything different.
I 100% after this movie, especially Force Awakens, I gave him a pass with because, like I said, it was kind of bringing the franchise back after 3 decades from where it left off, the original trilogy. And I like his Star Trek reboot, but I'm also not a Star Trek person.
So that's why you like it.
Yeah,
because it reminds you of Star Wars.
More or less. Super 8 was fine. Mission Impossible 3 was good, but it wasn't like amazing.
Oh, was that the one with Dougray Scott?
No, that was Mission Impossible 2. That was John Woo. Mission Impossible 3 is the one with the first one, Michelle Monaghan. That was his first movie.
with Philip
I like
Seymour
Lost, but it didn't really satisfy as far as answers and mysteries are concerned. He's got the whole weird mystery box thing. That his storytelling, which is create a mystery box, and what's in the box? I don't know, but the fun is to keep the mystery alive.
That's what Dean Koontz does with his books.
Okay, well, he's not really that great at wrapping things up. He's admitted that himself. I think he's exactly and generally I think he's a good director, but I don't think he should have had anything to do with the writing of this.
Were there any lens flares in this?
Nah, probably. I'm not as attuned to that as a lot of people are. But I was talking to another past guest on the show recently, because obviously everybody on my personal Facebook knows that I'm obsessed with Star Wars. And Candace Caw was messaging me just today and saying, maybe they should have worked together or something. Abrams and Johnson. And I was like, yeah, they had if J.J. Abrams had directed a Rian Johnson script, this would have been much better.
Or is it possible they have too big of egos?
Or too different of storytelling styles.
I feel like one of them would have walked away.
Possibly.
Probably Rian Johnson.
I think
because he doesn't have as much clout.
Well, I think they may have offered him this movie, and I think he's like, no, I don't want to do Knives Out.
I think I remember reading the Knives Out.
So, and I don't blame him for being like, fuck that, I'm out. I'm good. I got this. I want to do because he's an auteur.
I'm surprised.
He does his own things. He doesn't really. I don't think Rian Johnson necessarily wants to be a franchise guy. I think he'll do a Star Wars trilogy if he's given complete creative control, and I think he'll pop in and do a movie and then pop back out. But I don't think he's a guy. He doesn't want to be like. Like you mentioned Zack Snyder, who did like multiple consecutive movies, or like the Russo brothers, where we're like, oh, we're just gonna lock in and spend a decade in this franchise. I don't think he has any interest in doing like a Justin Lin.
Like money though.
Yeah, well, he's got more of a creative vision, and I think what I'm realizing with J.J. Abrams is he's a solid filmmaker and he's a good visual storyteller and that kind of thing. I don't really think he does the most interesting or inventive narratives, like films. I think they're just kind of... Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
About Ryan,
you know me, I'll talk too much if you don't stop me.
About Rian Johnson is that I'm actually surprised that they would have gone back to him after the backlash from The Last Jedi.
I wonder if that was right, like maybe even before the movie opened, when it was... it's unclear exactly when he turned it down.
Maybe,
yeah.
Like, it's a Star Wars movie. Everyone's going to love it.
Maybe. Well, I did an article for, again, cheatsheet.com on directors who deserved to make a new movie in the saga, and I had people like Taika Waititi and like
that would have been
Catherine Bigelow and like Brad Bird and a bunch of different filmmakers that I think would be interesting. James Mangold was supposed to do a Boba Fett movie. He did Logan and a bunch of other things. I think that they need to get some new blood into this franchise, and I think that it's time for the Jedi to end, like Luke says in Last Jedi. I think it's time for the Skywalkers to put the Skywalkers to bed. Because that's been going on for 40 years, and if you're going to grow this franchise into a Marvel-style shared universe with multiple stories and stuff, you got to... Is
that the plan?
You got to get away from this is the one family and this is the one thing that we're like hung up on, and everything spins off. Everything spins off from the original trilogy. I mean, they proved with Solo that... that was maybe, whether you think it's a timing issue release-wise or just nobody wants to see a Han Solo movie, it's just you're not pumping any new ideas in there. You're just milking the old ones. And I think it's time to step away from that and do something new. So any other spoiler-free reactions, whatever, before we get into the actual content of this episode?
I mean, and I didn't.
Did you enjoy this movie? Would you recommend
I enjoyed the movie more than you did, it sounds like.
Well, I'm more critical because I'm a Star Wars fan, but ultimately I'll watch it anyway.
And you're also more critical because you're a critic.
Yes. Well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. I understand all your criticisms, but it wasn't like terrible.
No, I don't think it was terrible either. I think it was a letdown.
It was more different than The Force Awakens, at least.
Right. Yeah. So wait, how would you? That's a good segue. How would you rank this within at least this trilogy? Like, is this your favorite, your least favorite, and the middle one?
I did like The Last Jedi the best, I'd say.
I knew there was a reason I married you.
And then I want to say this one too.
I never married you.
And then Force Awakens.
Force Awakens is your least favorite, really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
It's like, because we watched all the movies before The Force Awakens came out. You finally showed me. And it's almost it's like I saw A New Hope just recently before them. I'm like, oh.
I just saw this. What the hell?
Yeah. And I like that I like that Rey is in these movies, and she's the star, and she's the protagonist. I like that because Rey is, she's a woman, she's strong, she's beautiful, she's resourceful, and that's the world that our daughters growing up in.
The other thing that I agree 100%. And our daughter has a Rey. You were talking about Barbies earlier. Our daughter has a Rey doll up there. She sleeps with a little BB-8 every night and stuff. So she's really into. This will be the trilogy she'll grow up with. That's like her original trilogy.
And she doesn't seem like she cares about Star Wars unless BB-8's in it. Like I have a Star Wars shirt
BB-8?
that Rob got me that it's like the character
the original
from
trilogy,
the original trilogy, and she's like, "Is BB-8 on there?" I'm like, "No, honey."
Well, I was listening to the Shakespeare Star Wars audiobooks, and she's like, every time there was a beep, beep, squeak, squeak, whatever, she's like, "Is that BB-8? I'm like, "No, honey, that's R2-D2. And then 2 seconds later, "Is that BB-8? I was like, "No, that was R2-D2. BB-8's not in this one." She doesn't understand.
He is cute, though.
Yeah, but also I wanted to say, to your point about Rey, not only is she powerful and strong and all that, she's also emotional. She's also vulnerable. Yes. Like she's not like
too.
She's not like, and I'm watching The Mandalorian, and this actress is on it, so obviously it's just the first person I thought of. She's not like Gina Carano style.
She's on that
She's
show?
on The Mandalorian, and she's great on it. I like Gina Carano, but I'm saying she's not like I'm the buff. I'm a woman, but I'm super buff and badass as any of the guys. Like Rey is not like, she's more like Wonder Woman, where she's like compassion and that's part of her strength, her compassion, her emotion, her vulnerability, and all that other stuff. Plus, she has like the darkness in her, and that's not some kind of a weird Kylo Ren sex joke. But yeah, she's a more complicated depiction of a heroine in this kind of movie. And before we get into spoilers, I would also definitely recommend to people that haven't seen this movie, obviously, to check it out. I do like it a lot. It's definitely my least favorite of this trilogy. It's probably middle of the list for me as far as the whole saga. I think I'm probably Empire, Last Jedi, New Hope, maybe Force Awakens, Revenge of the Sith.
You're still putting those Ewoks in there?
Huh?
The Ewoks still get rated?
The Return of the Jedi?
Yes.
I didn't say that.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, you didn't. Oh.
It's between right now. I think Return of the Jedi is kind of edging this out, honestly, right now, which put this at like number 7, I think.
Oh boy.
Out of the like 12 or whatever. But I still like it. It's not like, if I was going based on personal preference, they would all be above Rogue One and Solo, because I'm into the Skywalker.
Agreed.
I know you don't like those, but the Skywalker stuff, the Jedi and Sith, and that epic struggle of good and evil. That's the Star Wars stuff I enjoy. I'm watching The Mandalorian, and that's fine, but I'm not like, that's not, the bounty hunter stuff is not my jam.
You don't watch for the bounty hunter. You watch for Baby Yoda.
I do watch it for. Well, that's why everybody.
I don't even watch
it.
the show, guys. I just know about it because everyone's talking about it, including my husband, including people at work. So I know all about Baby Yoda.
He's cute.
And how cute he is.
You can go on and look at the gifts
and how the merch
get
sucks.
that. Yeah. Well, the merch hasn't even come out yet. The merch is like
Are they fixing it?
They're pre-ordered and stuff now. They're like, there's a little bit out there, but not as much as you'd think. Because I don't think they were trying to keep it as a spoiler because it's revealed at the end of the anyway. It's revealed at the end of the first episode. But I was saying, like this whole Jedi Sith Skywalker prophecy, chosen one balance and stuff. Like I mentioned before on here, that my whole big question with going back and looking at all these movies is the question of the balance in the Force, and if this movie was going to answer that, like, where they were gonna, what does it mean to be balanced in the Force? 2 Jedi, 2 Sith, no Sith, all Jedi, or no Jedi or Sith, and kind of something in the middle, which is what Carrie and I sort of agreed we wanted this to land on. I don't know if it 100% gets there, kind of, but not really. I think it does set up for something, definitely a fresh start with the franchise, and I'd love to see more movies set after this point, not involving any of these characters necessarily, or involving them in very limited roles.
Except for Rey.
No, I don't. I'm saying I don't want Rey. I don't want another trilogy with Rey as the star. I want this story, the world.
I want my money back.
I want the post Rise of Skywalker world to have consequences going forward, where perhaps there aren't Jedi or Sith. And then we'll get into more details on exactly where this leaves off in a second. So those are just kind of our spoiler-free reactions. I think we both definitely would recommend you check it out. And it's also really funny that we're like roughly an hour into this episode, because when we did with The Force Awakens, we did an hour of preamble and then an hour of like spoiler content. So we kind of on accident did the exact same thing here, which I find really funny.
And this is how you have 2-hour-long Star Wars podcasts.
Because we go on, well, weren't supposed to talk for so long, kind of leading up into it. So
this is how long we talk about other things that are not Star Wars.
Yeah,
so.
That's true. Well, and I've talked to you about wanting to have another podcast that is just life related, just because I think we have a lot of interesting conversations. And, you know, I like to toot our own horn and be like, listen how cool we are when we have our private conversations, honk, honk.
We're not self-righteous at all.
Sometimes. So that's obviously we're talking about Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker. So let's listen to a little bit of the trailer right now.
It's an instinct. Feeling. The Force brought us together.
We're not alone. Good people will fight if we lead them.
People keep telling me they know me. No one does.
But I do.
Long have I waited. And now you're coming together. Is your undoing.
What are you doing there, 3PO?
Taking one last look, sir. At my friends.
That was a little bit of the trailer for Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. We talked about the whole much of the saga. I had a second to be like, wait, which one is this? So now we're going to be going full force, pun intended, with spoilers. And I can reveal that the wine we are drinking is Tall Dark Stranger, which I thought was kind of a nice in memoriam for Kylo Ren. Who
This is not
spoilers,
a Hayes partnership.
No, it's unfortunately. Thought it was nice in memoriam to Kylo Ren, who, spoilers, does not survive this movie. So, Kai, let's talk about I have a number of topics here. So at the beginning of the film, first of all, here's my issue with it. One, I was talking about how this movie doesn't really serve as a natural progression from The Last Jedi. I think the fact that it starts out with "the dead speak," Emperor Palpatine has sent a transmission throughout the galaxy, and that's just the opening crawl.
Which I'm really impressed that they still do the opening crawl.
Oh, they got to keep that.
Because it happened. It happened
the
the way that it did because it was just something different to do, and they just did it by practical effects.
Right.
Well, now they probably do it.
Oh yeah,
like CGI.
Of course. No, but that's part of, and that's if they're not going to do any more traditional episodes for a while. I imagine that means no long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, no opening crawl and that stuff. Anyway, that's
or maybe
super.
they're going to keep it.
I don't think but they didn't keep it for Rogue One or Solo. I think that's super fucking lazy storyline. Lazy storytelling to be like, and then guess what? Emperor Palpatine sent a message. Is he alive? Probably. I thought was terrible. I think there's a million different ways they could have handled this. So what are your thoughts in general for Palpatine being back at all? J.J. Abrams has said that, you know, his whole defense of it is how Palpatine, if you go back and watch these movies in order of episodes 1 through 9, he's such a major, he's the big bad of both of the previous trilogies. So it's like you don't get to the end of a book and then the main villain of the whole story is not present in there.
That's true.
So that's an element that was kind of their ace in the hole, I think, to try and unify the three trilogies. And of course, Rian Johnson came in there and cut Snoke in half. But Snoke wasn't really that interesting anyway. We already are invested in Palpatine. So did you think that Palpatine's return was a good idea? And do you think that it was executed effectively?
I thought it was a good idea because if you know what J.J. Abrams said, that does make a lot of sense. You can't, Emperor Palpatine. Well, Palpatine was a big deal in both parts of the trilogy. What I'm curious about is what happened to his mentor. They never explained that.
Darth Plagueis?
Yes.
They insinuate that he killed him in his sleep in Revenge of the Sith.
I guess so.
He's like, oh, and then his apprentice killed him in his sleep. And then he kind of looks like, it was me. He also supposedly, again, it's never 100% confirmed, in the films at least, created Anakin by manipulating the midi-chlorians. So that's like behind Anakin's immaculate conception in Episode 1. That means like there was no father. So this, that was one idea I've heard that was floated around regarding Rey, that she was also created like that.
Multiple times I've picked up on that.
I mean, which part? He says it in there, and it's sitting right next to Anakin. I mean, I don't know. You also don't watch these things as closely as I do.
Why would Palpatine care about Anakin's mom?
I don't know if he necessarily. You're getting off track. We're supposed to be talking about Rise of Skywalker. So, did you think they handled that in an effective way here? Did you think it worked the way they brought him back, which was corpse guy on a machine?
So wait, because he fell off.
He got thrown off of the thing and died. He even says in this movie. Yeah, that's a lot stronger. It's like, I've died before.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, why are you here then? Voldemort style, clinging to life.
Yeah. I mean, it was weird that he was hanging by the little
mechanism.
Yeah. And
well, he's supposed to be basically kind of a living corpse in a way.
Yeah.
Or like he built himself a new body, because obviously, and this is another element that's.
But how would he do that if he?
Well, this is an element I was telling you after we saw the movie. This is an element that's in some of the books that Palpatine does return in the books at some point, the non-canon Legends books. But he does clone himself, so he comes back by cloning himself. So there's elements of the now stricken expanded universe, I think, that they're tapping into here by bringing him back in, as far as tampering with cloning and all that stuff. And then they give kind of a half-ass explanation where, like, I made Snoke, and we're like, okay, I guess.
Well, like, and about that, it was like, so he said, oh, I made Snoke. Well,
right.
Why couldn't he just have been Emperor Palpatine to everybody?
That's a good question.
I guess maybe it is like a Voldemort thing that he
wasn't strong enough or something.
Or people knew that he was alive, it would be...
Well, he's also got this entire auditorium full of acolytes, basically Sith worshippers, being like, "You're the man, Palpatine." Which was, by the way,
I like we talked about the movie. I think they were not really real because they just blew away when.
You think they were like spirits from beyond, like all the Sith Lords that have ever perished, kind of thing?
Yes.
Because there is that great line with him where he's like, "I am all the Sith." Or whatever.
Yeah, I don't think that they were really there.
You think they were like spirits?
Because they disappeared very quickly afterwards.
It's all very that whole
again.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you for like the third and final time. What did you think about the way they brought him back? Did you think it worked, or did you think it was like kind of half-assed? Because I kind of feel like it was not explained / developed very well, and I think that they revealed it in the trailers because that way in the movie it's less jarring when they just kind of open with Palpatine kind of there already. I, in a way, would have preferred that to be kind of a middle of the movie reveal. That way you could kind of lead into it a little bit more.
Yeah, I was
like have his transmission go out in like 15 minutes into the movie, the one that's referred to in the opening crawl, because as is, it's just kind of jarring where you're like, wait, what happened now?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I was thinking that when we were watching it, I was like, whoa, what?
Yeah.
Is that happening already?
I think they could have done that a little, if they want to do this, the same storyline with Palpatine, have him come back the exact same way, whatever, just like edit it a little better and just like have it be, it would have been much smoother a transition into that storyline, which they again didn't set up in the previous two movies at all. They have him say that I made Snoke and all that, but there's nothing in the last two movies to indicate that that's possibly a thing that was in play or even in their back of their minds until now.
But one thing that they didn't show until middle of the movie was the fact that he was on the mechanisms. In the beginning of the movie, when we first see him, he's just like, "Hello, I'm here and I'm creepy." But that's it.
Right.
But then when Rey goes and sees him again, he's still there, but now he's
I don't think he can really go. Like, I don't think he can't sustain himself yet.
That's why he's still.
That's why he's like, they need to come here because I'm on house arrest.
I was doing all this stuff because I can't leave.
And it is very Lord Voldemort-y because when you see him in the Goblet of Fire, Peter Pettigrew. This is a little teaser for our next franchise series in 2020. We're going to be talking about Harry Potter, which I mentioned. You see Peter Pettigrew show up at the Goblet of Fire with little tiny baby Voldemort, who's like, I'm sort of alive, but also kind of mostly dead. And then he throws him in the pot and gives him some magic, whatever bullshit. And then he's like, I'm a dude now. Yeah. Damn, where'd my nose go? That kind of thing. But he's kind of basically barely clinging to life kind of thing. And I like that. I love Palpatine's one of my favorite Star Wars characters, so I'm glad to have him back in this movie. I just would have liked had been set up better. I do think that one thing that the movie does that is really cool, in basically the first scene, is apparently that's supposed to be Mustafar, by the way, which I didn't get in the movie at all. That planet where...
Exegol?
No. The planet where Kylo Ren goes and it's like all red outside and he's like fighting people and he gets the Wayfinder that talks to him and shit. Yeah. That's supposed to be Mustafar, which you're like, what the hell is that?
No, I remember Mustafar.
You remember Mustafar?
Mustafar is where Anakin...
Wow, I'm so impressed right now. You remember the name of the planet and everything? That's impressive.
Yeah, I knew exactly what you were talking about.
Wow.
When you said Mustafar.
Okay. Guys, now I'm speechless. So yeah.
All right, I'm kind of geeky too, I guess.
you know, this is, I'm going to put this on the air. You, with the Marvel stuff and with Star Wars, like, you like to be like, you're too cool for that. Like, you're like, that's some geeky bullshit. I'm not into that. But then when we talk about it, you're like actually kind of more into it than you think you are. Like, you're not a Star Wars fan like that I am, but you're a casual Star Wars fan.
I can't confirm or deny.
You're a casual. It's okay to be a casual fan.
I may have been reading BuzzFeed articles about some stuff.
About which stuff?
Oh, Star Wars stuff.
Ooh, really? You didn't tell me that. I don't think. So yeah, that's supposed to be Mustafar, but they do have that moment where he's like...
How'd you find that out?
It's been on all over Facebook today.
Oh.
Where they're like, that's Mustafar. I'm like, really? Why didn't you tell me? You didn't...
I thought Mustafar was like hot.
It is kind of, but it's like, I guess it's a different part of Mustafar. I don't know. I call bullshit a little bit on that. Like, that's Mustafar, guys. It's all connected. I'm like, it didn't feel like it's Mustafar, but okay.
Unless J.J. Abrams says that, I wouldn't believe it.
I wouldn't have known that it was.
They have so many planets in these movies. It's crazy.
And they all have one ecosystem each, pretty much.
There's like a new planet every movie.
Well, yeah, that's like multiples. Gotta expand the universe. But he does say, like, I've been every voice that you've ever heard. And he turns to Darth Vader and Snoke and that. And Palpatine's voice.
Why would he be Darth Vader?
So the supposition or the implication there, I guess, is that he was talking to Kylo Ren. And like, remember in Force Awakens, Kylo Ren is like, tell me, grandfather, show me the dark side or whatever, talking to the mask, that maybe he's been hearing voices of Darth Vader talking to him. And then it was Palpatine kind of manipulating him the whole time. Is sort of the idea, I think, there. And I think
like
that
he did with his grandfather.
Kind of, yeah.
What a sick fuck.
Yeah, well, spoilers, he's dead now.
So you think.
So I like elements of the Palpatine thing. It just felt really shoehorned in, and I think they could have handled it a lot better and made it feel much more smooth. But I like Ian McDiarmid, and I love, the big showdown with him and Rey.
And you've seen him amazing. At Comic-Con.
I did see him and Ray Park.
Before he was ever even cast in
when
this
he's
movie.
like, I'm done with Star Wars. I'm just going to come out of conventions to be like, remember I was the Emperor that one time? Now he's been in 6 out of the 9. He's been in most of them.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, because the whole prequels, he has a cameo in Empire, Return of the Jedi, obviously, and in this. And I have a sip of my Tall Dark Stranger. So yeah, any other thoughts on Palpatine's return in general? Like, did we? I think we liked that he was back, but I think we both had issues with the way he was back.
Yeah. And he was like super creepy.
Oh, well.
That was another reason I'm like, this is
he's
not
got
appropriate
like
for children.
Dead white eyes kind of thing. Yeah, but he didn't have his like deformities until midway through the battle, which I thought was cool.
Oh yeah, where'd
like,
go?
Because I think that was supposed to be a new body. That's what I'm saying. I think he was like building himself a new body, but he didn't have his like spirit or soul, or I don't know. He didn't have a soul anyway. So going from the Palpatine issue, the other big question I think a lot of people had going into this was Carrie Fisher.
Yeah.
Who obviously passed away in 2016, which is very sad and a big bummer, especially for Star Wars fans. Do you think that they, air quotes, fixed the Leia, air quotes, problem? And how do you think that worked, or did it?
I think that her appearance in the movie was distracting. Which were your words before, but I understand why they wanted to do that, because you know she still had to be in there because she still had her part of the story that needed to be told, even though it was very minute because she wasn't alive to film these scenes. So they just kind of used archive footage from Force Awakens and The Last Jedi and put her in these scenes with the crew and with Rey, and it was just weird. And she was very passive. I'm using your words again. And her acting, I was just like, oh, it didn't.
Well, because
sit
those
right.
scenes are supposed to be like, tell me, what's the update on the battle? And they're like, this person's coming here, and they haven't heard. And she's like, okay, let me know when you hear from them, that kind of thing. And you're like, this is the context that they provided in the movie is like, this is kind of dire. Like, why aren't you more upset / actually emotional or interested in what's happening right now? So I think that definitely is part of it. Because I'm a crazy person, I was listening to Little Gold Men, which I was telling you about this last night, and they were talking about the Rise of Skywalker, and they were saying one theory that they had on there, Anthony Breznican from Vanity Fair was talking about how his kind of rationalization for it, and obviously this is not the way it was intended because they had what they had to work with, was that Leia had experienced so much loss, and so was sort of kind of on her way out already, kind of fading into the Force a little bit, and then maybe that could almost be a way that they could rationalize why she was kind of partially not present / disconnected from things, to kind of narratively have her disconnect on screen with the other characters.
That's true. That's true. She did lose. She lost her son. She lost the dark side. She
lost Lord Darn.
Yeah, she lost her partner,
husband, or whatever. It's unclear. There's no ceremony in these movies.
By her son.
Yeah,
by the hand of her son.
That sucks.
And her brother.
Oh, we'll get to Han Solo.
And her brother.
Yeah.
In a very short period of time.
True. So I think she was kind of.
Now I feel sorry about that. I'm sorry, Princess.
Well, I mean that wasn't the
Organa?
The context that was intended. I don't think, because that was obviously from a different point in the Force Awakens or whatever. It kind of works. I mean, I'd prefer it to them being like in the opening crawl, General Leia Organa has died. I'll be like, oh, that's lame. That would have been real in poor taste. Yeah, I mean, the worst taste would have been like, here's a new actress who's now Leia, or here's a CG version of Leia. That would have been shitty.
Well, it's like I was reading the trivia that after they did get approval from Tom Fisher and Billy Lord, they then
Todd Fisher, I think.
Oh yes,
yeah, her brother, right?
Yeah.
Billy Lord's on set anyway.
Yeah, we're able to then use, like, they were okay with them using the stock footage. So I really don't think they would have been okay with using a CGI.
Right.
Leia.
Right. And I think we do, even with that, it's funny too, because we're watching this knowing what they had to deal with, kind of like Furious 7 when we saw that after Paul Walker passed away. I think we were just like, how's this work? How are they going to pull this off? What's going on here? How are they going to end his storyline? Like, how is he in this scene when, whatever? Like, we were trying to find the seams.
And this is going to sound terrible, but I feel like Paul Walker's death at the end of, or how they dealt with his death after Furious 7 was more emotional than how they dealt with
I agree.
Carrie Fisher.
100%. I cried during the Leia thing.
They put a stunt double underneath the blanket.
I cried in the Leia thing, but I cried more. I was more emotionally affected by the Furious fight in a Fast and Furious movie, which is weird. But I think we're looking at it, and we're watching this movie in context. So I think we're kind of searching for the seams, and I wonder if years from now people are even going to notice that. Like, if it's going to be as obvious to them that Leia had passed, Carrie Fisher had passed away, and that they had to stitch an arc together for the character.
That's true.
I'm curious. Like, I'm looking forward to seeing the movie again on Monday and trying to separate back from that and seeing, because you watch a movie a totally different way when you're seeing it for the second time. Like, you're not paying attention as much to the story because you've already seen it. So now you're noticing little details, or you're picking up bits of dialogue or jokes that sailed past you or whatever. So I'm curious to see if I'm as bothered by it this time. I also do think that they were able to salvage a small part of her arc from what would have been episode 9 had Carrie Fisher been around, using mostly, just clips of audio that they had and things like that, because she is pivotal to Kylo Ren's redemption. I'd say roughly, 2/3 of the way through the movie, maybe, when she uses the last bit of energy she had. And again, I think you and I and the movie maybe are trying to imply that she was kind of losing the will to live, kind of like her mom, I guess, which, is canon technically, so could be a little bit of that. She was feeling her life force was kind of being sapped at a certain point, and used the last of it to reach out to her son during that pivotal moment with that battle with Rey, and played a role in his redemption in a way that she would have been more substantive in had Carrie Fisher not passed. You know what I mean? I think that moment probably would have been a little cleaner. And I've heard on podcasts and other people, critics and stuff, speculate that would have been Carrie Fisher in that scene immediately after, not Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
And I think that would have been that would have felt better. And I think in a way that's probably how they got Harrison Ford back, because he wanted out in Return of the Jedi. I didn't think they got him back, and they're like, listen, Carrie passed away. We're trying to make this happen. I think we need you for this. I think he probably came back just out of love for Carrie than anything else at that point, just as his to do his part to complete her arc.
I think that scene worked though, because
I think it worked too. But it's easy to imagine that would have been Leia.
Yeah, but the thing is that Kylo Ren was tortured by killing his dad. Tortured by the memory of his dad. And he wasn't tortured. He was, he was like, oh, my mom. I love my mom. But he wasn't, tortured by his mom. Because he could have gone back to her. Right.
And he couldn't kill her in The Last Jedi, even though he almost did. He almost shot almost was the one that took her, the one that almost killed her in The Last Jedi was him. And there's that critical moment with Kylo Ren making that choice not to fire on his mom. But and this movie also early in the first act, I think, brings that up again. That, you've been haunted by what you did to your dad, and blah blah blah. They mention that in The Last Jedi, and Luke even says I'll always be with you, just like your father, and things like that. So I think this movie again reiterates the Han Solo and the impact that, Snoke says in The Last Jedi, it split the killing his father split his soul in two. I think, and reiterates that, and you're right, that is his overall trauma, was he did this kind of unspeakable act, and he's like, there's no coming back, and he says in this movie, there's no coming back. He's like, I can't go back to her and my mom and whatever. And I think that, and I wrote about this was it for Cheat Sheet? It might have been for Cheat Sheet back in the day when I was freelancing for them, that I kind of think he's he's kind of a more interesting character than Darth Vader. Just because he has that conflict, he does these things it's you understand him more than you have any of these other villains up to this point. And I think that there's something very specific about a person's relationship with their mother than there is with their father. You and I see that with our daughter. She'll be like, I don't like daddy. And she'll go, and I go to mommy. And I'm like, all right. I get it. I can't argue with you on that. That's your mom. You came from her. You spent 9 months in her stomach, and you came out of her butt, as I like to joke. But yeah, so, there's a very primal connection that all of us have with our mothers. So I think that, I've heard people criticize that moment. Is it easy, or is it too quick, his turn, his redemption? And I'm like, yes and no. He
didn't really turn until his dad came in.
It happens quickly, kind of. But you also have to, and I guess we're kind of transitioning into the Kylo Ren thing.
He also got stabbed.
I was going to say, there's within a span of 5 minutes, he's reached out to his mom, by his mom, feels his mom transition into the Force, which again, I just said, losing your mom. Remember, there's that scene in Thor: The Dark World, not the greatest MCU movie, where Loki is like, oh, just chilling, talking to Thor, and then he drops the illusion, and he's like all fucked up, and his hair's all nappy, and he's all just like destroyed the room because his mom passed away. Like, you react very differently to your, you know, we all love our fathers. I love them, obviously. We love our dads and stuff, but there's a very specific connection to your mom. So losing your mom is going to have a greater impact on you, especially if you're Kylo Ren and you murdered your dad and your mom is the only one you have left. That, especially, and your uncle's dead, like your only family you have is your mom and she passes away. That's going to make an impact on you and make you think, well, fuck, did I make the wrong decisions in life? So that happens, and then Rey stabs him and then saves his life, and then he has his dad's memory come back, which I thought that was and I've seen articles about this saying that was one of the best scenes in the movie, and I kind of agree with that, because that moment in The Force Awakens is amazing, and this scene, you know, when I heard rumors about Harrison Ford coming back in this movie, I was questioning how that was going to work, because can't be a Force ghost. There was nothing in any of the movies ever that implied that Han Solo was even the slightest bit Force sensitive. But they frame it as a memory of Kylo Ren's that is reappearing to him, which is why, even though I like to tease that Han Solo seems like he has a little more scruff, he's a little more scruffy looking in his ghost form than he was in his living form, which meant, I guess, Harrison Ford didn't feel like shaving that day. But he approaches in the same way. He touches his face the same way. It's reenacting the moment from Force Awakens. Only, you know, Kylo Ren even says, you know, I know what I have to do. I don't know if I have the strength to do it. Now talking about turning to the light as opposed to murdering his own father. So I love that they restaged that entire moment with the complete opposite result. You know, I'm thinking about this movie before we're talking about it more. I'm like, shit, maybe it was too hard on it the first half of this episode, because that scene is just beautiful, and I loved that, and I think it really sold his urge to redeem himself. But then it also, I think, in a way sets up, and this is why I was saying earlier about how I think it's so important that we understand him so much and we empathize with him, but also kind of fear him at the same time, because I think it makes sense that he would sacrifice his life, spoilers, for Rey in the end, because I think at this point, he's after that point where his dad appears to him and he wants to set things right. I don't really think he's like, yeah, I'm just going to live a happy life and just hang out. I think he's more thinking, I need to make this shit right before I peace out. You know what I mean? I don't think he's like, I'm just going to hang out and like, Rey and I are going to live happily ever after necessarily. I think he's just
that much guilt too.
Yeah, exactly. He has such a self-loathing that's a weight on him, especially since he murdered his dad, but he's also killed lots of other people and done so many terrible things and been complicit, which is, in this political climate, again, is a very loaded word, and a lot of horrible things that the First Order has done. So I think, and I'm going on way too long. I want to hear what you have to say on this. Go.
No, the First Order has done.
Yeah, so I think in a way he kind of wants to peace out, but I think he just wants to redeem himself before he does so.
One thing I was just thinking about when you were saying that is, what the hell? What is with this galaxy? Have they ever had happy moments where they're not...
It's Star Wars, not Star...
where they're not dealing with the Clone Wars, again, they have Emperor Palpatine and then he disappears and they go back to this thing. Yeah, like... What the hell?
They're called, this is called Star Wars, first of all. And I like to keep, apparently this is, I don't know why, just because this is a series that involved a lot of people on the show. I'm very nostalgic for other guests I've had on this show, so I'm referencing them a lot. But Will Ashton, past and future guest of the show, has said, he posted on his social media a few days ago, he's like, more than ever now we need Star Peace.
Yes, I mean, my goodness.
This is always Star Wars. And he was being joking about the whole Star Wars thing, but it's a worthy point. It's like this galaxy is just always fighting.
That's the movie that I want to see. I want to see what
Star Peace?
That's like what their life is like without the fighting.
Or at least smaller.
It's just a resurgence of new
well, and that's what Maz Kanata said in Force Awakens. It's like the Sith, then the Empire, then the First Order. It's the same bullshit, it's just different forms. And that's why I think, maybe Star Wars could benefit.
Kind of reminiscent of our own political
true.
climate. And that's the thing with entertainment, is that they do kick over.
As Jojo Rabbit said, the movie, not the character, it's not a good time to be a Nazi. Which is a great movie. Go see that if you haven't seen Jojo
But
Rabbit.
I did actually want to say about The Last Jedi that we do owe a lot to Rian Johnson's script for the Rise of Skywalker, because I liked what...
Well, Rian Johnson didn't write the right... Oh, you mean for his work in The Last Jedi for this?
Because,
okay.
it talks a lot, it talks about balance, as you and Carrie mentioned a lot, and take The Last Jedi, where Luke Skywalker was about to go bad for a second with Ben, and but he was Ben Solo, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he was never a Skywalker,
He's Skywalker by blood, though.
right? But not by last name.
No.
Because they do the same thing in the United States. Okay, anyway, so
Apparently.
yeah, so Luke Skywalker for a minute was about to go bad. He was about to go more Sith, where he was gonna
Take out his nephew?
yeah. So that comes into play in the Rise of Skywalker.
Making me want to watch The Last Jedi right now, and I have other things to do.
It comes into play in the Rise of Skywalker because already with how the Rise of Skywalker ended is nobody, both Ben and Rey, they're not Siths, they're not Jedis. They're in between. They're balanced.
Well,
they're good, they're bad. Just like Luke Skywalker was good and bad. He was kind of like, it's
almost like people are complex and not all one or all of the other thing.
Like when they said in Revenge with, a Jedi wouldn't do that. Like, how freaking...
Oh, wait. Which one are you talking about?
Mace Windu did.
And that's in Attack of the Clones.
Oh, whatever.
He's like,
How
He's like,
pretentious are you?
Jedi, Count Dooku couldn't assassinate anyone. It's not in his character. He was once a Jedi or whatever he says. And I'm like, the fuck does that mean?
Yeah, but...
the Jedi Order they were like arrogant kind of assholes.
But Luke Skywalker was like really like the first one that had that complexity.
In the movies, at least. I think you see hints of that in some of the other characters, but yes.
And he was also related to and he was a son of Darth Vader.
Well, he almost turns to the dark side in Return of the Jedi. I mean, he literally wants to strike down Emperor Palpatine, and Vader stops him with his lightsaber. Remember, in that movie.
Yeah.
So, no, it's like and that's the great thing about this trilogy, and that I really like. And then I want to transition into the Rey side of things a little bit. Is that they really are the yin and yang, I mentioned that on the podcast with Carrie, and she was in complete agreement about that. That one is mostly light with a little bit of dark in the center, and then the other one is mostly dark with a little bit of light in the center. And I love that there is that they complement each other so well, and that's why you get in this movie, which is what I hinted at on my Instagram when I took a picture of my second and third Funko Pops that I've ever owned, that the two of them were apparently a new concept, which is now in Wikipedia, which is the Star Wars wiki, that they are a Force dyad, which I thought is a really cool idea, that they are basically the Force version of a yin and yang, that they complement each other in that way.
I love the yin yang.
Yeah, it's cool.
That.
It's so cool because there's good in everyone, there's bad in everyone. It's just, it's up to you to kind of focus on to make, again, this is a very high Harry Potter, a very kind of classic hero's journey concept, but it's up to you to decide who you really are. It doesn't matter if you're a Skywalker or a Solo or a Palpatine. And I think that leads us into Rey.
It's like that parable about the dog. It's like
dog?
I have the two dogs that fight.
I think you've told me this before.
Which one wins?
We've been together. Oh, the one you feed.
The one you feed the most. Yeah.
Wasn't that in a movie or something?
Probably. It's a very famous.
That was in a movie that I don't remember what it is, but that was then something.
Sounds important.
Yeah, it does sound important. It sounds like something from something I've seen. So going into shifting, so we liked Kylo's arc and the way it ended. I think.
I think so. I love that he got the lightsaber in his that was actually a new element.
They added
J.J. Abrams,
but that was all the people that are saying this completely shits in the face of the Last Jedi. I think it doesn't completely. It partially shits in the face of the Last, because it partially walks things back, but it doesn't completely undo things. And that was one element of this movie that I really loved. For some reason, they're still connected in the Force time kind of way still, which I don't know if that 100% makes sense, because in the last movie they were their minds were bridged by Snoke, supposedly. That was how they were able to see each other. And that happens in this movie too. But Snoke is dead. So I'm like, are they still connected in that same way? Is that...
I understood it that they were just getting more powerful.
Maybe that's...
Like she was training.
Maybe Snoke connecting their minds sort of unlocked that shit too. Even more so, and then now they're tapping into it on their own.
Yeah, I like that he grabbed her necklace, and that was the first. that was a precursor.
That was great.
What was going on?
Well, no, there's a little of that in The Last Jedi when he like reaches out for her or whatever, and he pulls his hand back, and it's like rainwater on it because she was outside in the rain. There's a little of that, but now they're like transferring objects and stuff. There's a scene where he's like cornered by the Knights of Ren, and she's got the lightsaber, and he's like, I need some help here, whatever, and he like reaches back and grabs the lightsaber. Oh man, you're getting me. I might bump this up now a little bit. I don't know. I might.
And
bump
then we
it
got
above.
cheers from the audience. When
I
that
might
happened.
bump it up above Return of the Jedi. I don't know. It's close. It's close between. I like Return of the Jedi a lot. Elements of it. The middle act is a mess, but.
There were Ewoks in this movie.
There were. That was Warwick Davis. That was Warwick Davis as the same Ewok from Return of the Jedi.
I can't believe they.
Warwick
brought
Davis,
the
who's going to be on a
back.
Willow show on Disney Plus, by the way, which that you might watch.
I love Willow.
That'll be a Disney Plus show you'll watch, not Mandalorian. But like Willow, I'm here.
But Val Kilmer.
I don't know if they're going to have Val Kilmer in it, but Warwick Davis will be in it. Warwick Davis is such a huge part of our childhood. It's kind of weird.
He was in Harry Potter as well.
He was. And that was apparently, from what I've heard, that was Warwick Davis playing Wicket at the end of the movie, and when the big, very Return of the Jedi-esque celebration, and that was Warwick Davis' son playing Wicket's son.
Aww.
In that scene, which I thought was interesting. I was like, "Aw," that's what I've heard. But yeah, the way that they used the whole force projection thing with the two of them, that was with the as far as the objects, the lightsaber, that was great. That was so cool. And Kylo Ren actually became like kind of a fun character by the last act because he was less brooding and like depressed and stuff. So he was actually
his scar disappeared.
Did it really?
Yeah.
The scar on his face?
Yeah.
Really? I have to go. I'll have to look at that on Monday. So Kylo Ren's story was great. Like I said, the story, the bigger mythology stuff in this movie was a
his
little
emotional
goofball.
scars transferring to his body, his physical body.
Maybe. Well, force healing is a thing now. The Mandalorian set it up the day before the Rise of Skywalker came out, which I thought was interesting.
Oh, I can't believe it. It sounds so coincidental.
Yeah, of course. It's almost like they released it like that way on purpose. So Rey's storyline. So Rey is training in this movie.
They did a lot of pay it forwards. I like that. They did a lot of pay it forwards, which I liked.
What do you mean?
Like they had the scene where Kylo Ren takes her necklace from her.
A lot of setup and payoff?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, pay it forward's a different concept.
So then they did that later with the lightsaber, so it made more sense. And then they did the force healing.
That's good screenwriting, setup and the payoff, yeah.
And then they did it with that little snake dragon trimmer thing.
Right.
And then
it was like it was like a basilisk. Again, another Harry Potter reference. Because I'm getting ready to rewatch all the Harry Potters for next year, so it's kind of felt like very basilisk-esque. So Rey's training in here, and she goes on this whole galaxy trotting adventure with Finn and Poe, who I love those two, and we'll get to that in a second. And we're going to have to make this relatively fast. So Rey's story I thought was great. What did you think about the fact that she was a Palpatine and the implications that entails?
That was an interesting twist. And I think, and I'm glad that she stayed primarily good.
We knew that. Did you really think she was the dark
no,
Rey thing?
But I did like the scene I did like the scene where her dark side came out.
She had like that vision.
Yeah, now that lightsaber's gonna be selling everywhere. But one thing though that bugged me was that she's so private that she doesn't even tell them what's going on. She just like starts walking away all the time and doesn't, and I'm just like, they're staying there to save your life. And you're being kind of self-centered. And because it was like more, I mean, she did tell me in the movie, like, hey, don't come with me. You could risk.
Well, she's isolating herself. I mean, at the very beginning, Poe is like, hey, you're an awesome fighter. We need you out there. Why are you over here hanging out, like training and bullshit? Like she's isolating herself.
But also she didn't do that, then she would have probably perished earlier.
Well, there you go. You just talked yourself out of your own
then
argument.
she's walking away. They're at the spaceship to get out of that desert place, and she just gets off the ship doesn't even tell them where she's going. She's like, I'll be right there. And then just goes. She doesn't say, oh, yeah, I'm going to go fight Kylo Ren again.
Right.
And that's selfish. And
and she goes to the top of the ship in the ocean planet or whatever?
Yeah, she's...
And Finn's like, wait a minute, Rey!
Yeah, and he tries to save her again. I'm like, dude, man.
You've been friend-zoned. Everybody's... You know what's really jacked up? And maybe this as someone who's been multiply friend-zoned in the past, pre-Kai, obviously. It's like Rey's friend-zoned Finn, Finn's friend-zoned Rose. I'm like, what's going on? There's no, like, sweet loving happening in this Resistance. It's a bummer. Everybody's, like, friend-zoning each other, even though I have my theories as to Finn, Rey, and Poe as a throuple. But, you know, that's my own personal fan fiction, I guess. After the fact.
It's not just you.
Probably it isn't. There's been Storm Pilot stuff, which I told you is Rey and Finn, and not Rey and Finn, Finn and Poe. And I don't know how much Poe and Rey stuff there's been, but I mean, that hug at the end, there's a similar hug with the three-person hug in at the end of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban at some point, when Buckbeak is killed, that they have like the three-person hug, which is supposed to be a visual homage to Y Tu Mamá También, which is the movie about the two men that have the sexual relationship with the woman. They have like the whole... You ever heard of Y Tu Mamá También?
J.K. Rowling would do that?
No. The third movie that moment was a visual callback to Y Tu Mamá También, which was also directed by Alfonso Cuarón, who did Prisoner of Azkaban, which I'll talk about with Jackson in a few months.
Okay.
So that felt very much like a kind of just giving a little tidbit of visual information for the internet if they wanted to run with that throuple theory, which, as someone who thinks all three of them are pretty attractive, I'm like, all right, that's something new for Star Wars. Let's let that happen.
And geez, and Poe is a grouch.
It's telling... Oh, but leave Oscar Isaac alone. It's telling that I thought he was really fun in this movie. I think this was probably the most fun that Poe has ever been. He's the most playful. He's the most Han Solo-esque.
I was just about to
say
that.
He's very much Han Solo in this movie.
Yes, he is.
He's got kind of that like shady, he's a spice runner, which we find out that he was basically a smuggler in this movie. It sounds like at a certain point. So it's like, okay, now they're really leaning into Han Solo hardcore. He's like if Han Solo had become a Resistance pilot, and he kind of became a rebel pilot, sort of, so a rebel general. And
J.J. Abrams did another property, Felicity.
He did. Well, we didn't even get to that yet.
But
we'll get to the new people. We have a lot to cover in the next 25 minutes or whatever before... For the people listening to this, recording this on Saturday night, and Eddie Murphy is about to host SNL in 25 minutes, so I'm trying to get this done as much as possible. So Rey being a Palpatine, do you feel like that was a betrayal of the fact that she was supposed to be a nobody in The Last Jedi?
No.
Or do you... Okay. Oh, wow. Okay.
No, I feel like... No, when I heard that she's like, you were nobody. Well, I even said to you...
You're like, that's bullshit.
I even said to you at the end of the movie, I'm like, really? How does he know?
Kind of is. I mean, because he felt it in the Force. That's like... I mean,
he's like,
Star
well,
Wars.
they chose
space
nobody.
magic.
But no, because...
It kind of works.
Yeah,
I mean, I like the idea that someone as special as Rey can come from you don't have to be part of a special lineage. But I also think that this movie finds a way to kind of have its cake and eat it too, where her parents technically were nobody, and that she had this darkness inside her, and there was actually, the movie explained a little more of a reason why she had that darkness. But it also boils down to, again, the Harry Potter thing, and I keep going back to, because Harry Potter and Star Wars have a lot of thematic similarities, where he has that connection with Lord Voldemort, where they're again mentally connected, where he can speak parcel tongue because some of his abilities and stuff transferred to him in this when he tried to kill him with the scar and all that. I think but Harry Potter chooses to be a hero, not a villain, chooses to do good, not evil. And I think Rey, being a Palpatine by blood, but choosing at the end to be a Skywalker, I think is very, I don't know, it's you know, it's a little cheesy, her being like, oh, what's your last name? And she's like, Skywalker, Rey Skywalker. I was like, I mean, it's a little cheesy ultimately, but it's Star Wars, so Star Wars has always been a little cheesy, let's be honest. And I think it's in a way a clever way, because I told you right after the movie, there were, I think, 3 predominant theories about what Rey's family name was going to be. And they were Palpatine, Kenobi, and Skywalker. And this movie has 2 out of 3. And as Jack Nicholson said in Mars Attacks, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. So I thought it kind of works. Is it a betrayal of Rian Johnson's concept that anybody can come from anything? Kind of the Ratatouille, like anyone can cook kind of thing. A little bit, kind of, but it doesn't piss me off so much. It doesn't piss me off as much of the fact that Rose has nothing to do in this movie, and Dominic Monaghan is just kind of hanging out, getting all the Rose lines, basically. As much as I like Dominic Monaghan from Lord of the Rings and Lost. So I don't know. I ultimately like the way that Rey's story ends. I like that. We do get that hashtag Reylo moment in the movie where they do kiss. Where I even leaned over to you during the movie, like, oh, Carrie's gonna be so happy. Which I know we're mentioning Carrie a lot in this episode, but it's because you and her are the only people I've talked to on podcast about this trilogy. So, yeah, and I like the fact that Kylo Ren dies in this movie. Not because I don't love that character, because I do love that character. I have a Funko Pop and a 12-inch tall figure that
you don't have one Darth Vader.
I don't have. I used to have. I had a bank of a bank of Darth Vader from back in the day that my parents I think still have. But I because if this is the end of the Skywalker saga, yeah, Rey is a Skywalker, but not really. So if this is the end of the Skywalker, it should be the end of the bloodline, which means all the Skywalkers need to be dead by the end of this movie.
And at least now you know they're not related.
Yeah, they're not twins like in the books. Han and Leia have Jason and Jaina, who are twins. One goes to the dark side and one doesn't. And then they have a younger child named Anakin Solo that I think it dies at some point. I didn't read all the books.
Kylo Ren was never in the comic books?
In the novels, like not in the legends, like the ones that are not. No, they kind of okay. Disney just threw all that in the garbage and started fresh. But they're taking elements of that. That I think, they're getting, in the way that Marvel Comics doesn't, like, slavishly adapt their comic books. They take them and they're like, all right, how can we make this make sense for this universe that we have and cinematically? So, they still kind of, think, reference that as source material now and again. So going through overall, like, the structure of the movie, the fact that they're chasing this Wayfinder, they're chasing this Sith dagger and things like that. Did you enjoy that? Because I've heard some people criticize that as kind of a video game like quest thing, just where like chasing MacGuffins around.
I thought it was kind of cool. I mean, I thought the Wayfinder was like I thought it was beautiful. And I thought, it seemed a little too easy that she's like, oh, this dagger.
What about, you have to stand in this very specific spot.
I'm like, wow.
You stand in this very specific spot. And there, it makes perfect sense. I'm like, well, what if the Death Star hadn't like landed in quite that angle? Like, you know what I mean? I don't know. There's so many there's ginormous plot holes there. And it's also they fall in the sinkhole, and Finn is like, oh, I forgot to tell you that I was like, I got the hots for you, and we all know that since the beginning of Force Awakens. But apparently John Boyega has said that it was actually he was going to tell her that he's implied or hinted, John Boyega has, that he was going to tell her that he's kind of Force sensitive. That he's like, it's an instinct, a feeling, because he a couple times.
Oh, because he did say it's a feeling.
Yeah, he has that kind of like, I think this is what we need to do kind of thing.
And why didn't he just tell her that?
He didn't get a chance. He got because they want to leave I know. They want to leave it up to you, I think. But they fall in the sinkhole and they're like, what? This is exactly where the other guy left off. And that's how they find the dagger, I think, right?
Yeah.
That again, this is one of the elements. Like, I like the characters in this movie. Obviously, I loved some of the moments in this movie. The overall story of we're chasing this dagger to chase this thing to get to this Wayfinder to get to the exit goal. I'm like, it's just kind of, I don't know, kind of boring and bland. Like the overall structure of the story. Even though I love where the characters end up and I love most of the things that happen to them along the way.
And why couldn't Rose go with them?
Because this movie has no interest in Rose, because Rose is a Rian Johnson creation and this is a J.J. Abrams movie, I guess. I agree. I don't like the way listen, that's another note I have here. Not enough Rose, one, because I like Kelly Marie Tran and I like that character, and people hate her, but those people are probably mostly assholes. So I would have loved this movie to give them the middle finger and be like, guess what? Rose is the key to the whole thing, bitches. Rose is not a Skywalker or something, but Rose is important. And instead this movie's like, okay, you guys are right. Rose is going to hang out and like watch the watch The Door or something. I not enough Rose. I hope that Kelly Marie Tran gets a chance to play this character more in Disney Plus shows or whatever, or that Kelly Marie Tran gets another big gig now after this that'll actually appreciate her, because it's unfortunate. Star Wars kind of did her dirty, I feel like. There's not enough Maz Kanata, the horniest little alien in the galaxy.
She had more to do in this movie than The Last Jedi.
Yes, she had a cameo in The Last Jedi, but I wanted Maz to be like, have her own little side quest going on. So more Maz Kanata, always. I wanted more Lieutenant Connix, who's kind of a non-entity in these movies, but that's only mostly because I love Billie Lourd in Booksmart, and I have a mild crush on her because of her Old Navy commercial. Don't judge me. So there's a lot of characters in here that I wanted to see more of. But the people that were in it, I mean, I liked what they were doing. I like the fact that the galaxy, as they call it, the galaxy trotting adventure, because it feels like globe trotting. It feels like National Treasure or like a James Bond where they're jumping from country to country. Only they were just like, we're going to go to this planet. Now we're going to go to this planet. Now we're going to go to this planet. I liked all that mostly because we got a lot of time to spend with Poe and Finn and not Rose, unfortunately, Rey. Poe and Finn and Rey, and I loved their chemistry, and I thought the dynamic with the three of them was a lot of fun. And we haven't really ever seen three of them interact in scenes before, so that was nice. Any thoughts on that before I keep going?
Just kind of what I said earlier, though, that Rey was doing her own thing a lot. Even when they were together, she's like, "Oh, I gotta abandon you again," and
it's like I got Jedi business to attend to, and you're like, "What the hell?"
Like, I like the fact that she's so independent, but it also bugs me because she's not necessarily
because
like
it's a hindrance to everyone else's mission.
Yeah,
That's a
really
good point.
Like a team player.
That's a good point.
And she, I think, sometimes gets a little bit too involved with her skills that she's just like, oh, okay, well, I
gotta go train. You guys wouldn't understand.
Yeah,
I'm off on my Jedi biz. And you're like, all right.
And I like that that's pretty amazing. They're all really good flyers. I mean,
yeah,
good pilots.
Pretty much.
I mean,
speaking of good pilots, good segue. I really like not only the fact that they randomly ran into Lando, but the Lando's in this movie, and also the fact that they I don't remember who. I think it was Finn, Poe. Somebody asked him like, "How did you guys do it? How did you win last time?" He's like,
"It was Poe, I think."
Yeah, he's like, we didn't know what we were doing. Me, Han, Leia, Luke, we all just had each other. I thought that was awesome. That was a lovely tribute to the original trilogy and those characters. Leia was still alive, I think, at that point. Yeah, because she's like, go give my love to Leia, that kind of thing. I thought that was beautiful. That was a lovely moment, and having Billy D. Williams back as that character was so much fun, even if it was basically that one scene and then later showing up in the Millennium Falcon at the big final battle. And they didn't kill him off. He's still around, right? He didn't die. So Billy D. Williams, Lily Lando can still carry on in stories. What did you think of the way that they rounded out?
Are they going to do a Lando movie?
I want them to. Can you, Billy? Okay, now that here's a quick 2-minute segue on the Lando thing. So Billy D. Williams came back as this character in Solo, which was not my favorite movie of the Star Wars movies. It's fine as a Star Wars movie. As a regular movie, it's fun, but as a Star Wars movie, it's okay. What about a Lando, a Star Wars story where Billy D. Williams in the present is telling a story from when he's young, so then you get both of them in the same movie.
Oh.
Make it happen, Disney, Lucasfilm, Disney Plus, whatever, somebody. Because I would love to see Donald Glover and Billy D. Williams both playing this role, kind of jumping back and forth a little bit.
I'm curious on what Lando was even doing after...
But you see, this
ended.
This is why, again, 1-minute sidebar. This is why that should have been Lando, a Star Wars story. What was Han Solo doing? I don't know, getting a blaster, meeting Chewbacca, getting the ship. All the shit we already know he did. What was Lando doing? We don't know shit about what Lando was doing. Except for losing the ship. We have no... In the original trilogy, you have no concept of what Lando's life is like, except that he was kind of dirty like Han Solo, and now he's gone straight and he's like administrator of Cloud City or whatever. That's pretty much all you know. That's a backstory worth exploring. Don't just show us the Cliff Notes version of Han Solo's life. The hell wants to see that? I guess nobody, because it didn't do that well at theaters. So General Hux, what did you think about the way? I thought that was really, he's not the most interesting character. He was more interesting to me in Last Jedi than he was in Force Awakens, I think.
Is that because of the jokes that they were pulling on?
Yeah, they made him like he's a goofball, and they made him like a buffoon in that movie, and I love that. Because I thought in Force Awakens, him being like a Hitler stand-in with the like, we will destroy the First Order. I thought that kind of fell flat for me, actually. That whole speechifying in front of the Nazi stormtrooper or army. It was not, and I say Nazi in air quotes, obviously, the First Order, but that did not particularly work for me. I thought The Last Jedi used him much more effectively. And it makes sense, based on what Rian Johnson established, that he would turn on the First Order just because he fucking hates Kylo Ren so much. And I thought that was really satisfying. And also, so was his death. Because I was like, okay, good. That guy's kind of a dick anyway. And they brought in Richard E. Grant, Oscar nominee for Can You Ever Forgive Me? Which is a great movie that I haven't shown you, by the way, yet. We should watch that one of these days. What did you think of his character, General Pride?
Fine.
Kind of an Imperial officer type, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
But I think we both suspected that General Hux was the spy.
Well, that's an easy way to write him out, and it's also an easy way to give him something interesting to do for a few scenes before you kill him off. So I was really happy with that. The new characters in general, we talked about Dominic Monaghan as, dude. I don't know, Resistance Pilot number 6 or whatever. I don't even know if he has a name, honestly. It wasn't interesting, don't care. I like Dominic Monaghan as Merry from Lord of the Rings. I had to remember his character for a second. And as Charlie Pace from Lost, which, again, another J.J. Abrams thing. So I think J.J. Abrams was just like, hey, I worked with you on that show. Come over here. Hey, Kerry Russell, I worked with you on that show. Come over here. I thought she was good.
He's loyal.
He is. Oh, she was also in Mission Impossible 3 for the same reason. I thought she was, she only had a couple scenes here, really, but I thought she was good. I like Zori Bliss. I like the fact that there's like, she gives us a little more insight into Poe Dameron's backstory. Clearly, I have a low-key Oscar Isaac infatuation that I've alluded to a couple times. So I'd like to see more Zori Bliss in some form, in animation, in another show or movie or whatever. So I think that character is interesting. Jana, the character...
I'm actually surprised that she was still, living, because that whole planet was raided with stormtroopers.
Yeah, well, she's badass. And she's Kerry Russell, so...
Like, it seemed...
It seemed
like with that character that she could have easily been a...
Dead person?
No, not a dead person, but she could have been one of Supreme Leader's people, just on that planet too.
She's got a cool helmet too.
Yeah, but why did... Yeah, it was just kind of...
I didn't get the Funko Pop of Zori Bliss, though.
I don't really
Do you remember back in the late 90s, early 2000s when she had that awesome Felicity hair, and people were like, oh my God, Felicity's hair, and then she cut her hair, and people were like, oh my God, what happened? You destroyed your show, canceled, or whatever.
Yeah,
Jesus. I never watched that show, but I'm sure it's good. I like Kerry Russell and the things that I've seen her, and I have no beef with Kerry Russell. I just think this movie introduces way more new characters than it really needs to. And I think I said...
Like Baba Frick?
I actually didn't even write a note about Babu Frick, but Babu Frick was the bomb. I would totally... If we had a little Babu Frick doll, our daughter would toss BB-8 in the garbage can. Babu Frick was really cute. And D.O. was really cute too. I like both of them a lot. I'm fine with the cute little back, because, let's be honest. Star Wars got to sell toys. That's part of what these movies do. The merchandising is huge. Merchandising, to go back to the Spaceballs thing.
Yeah.
So I'm used to that / expecting it. That was the whole Porg thing. And Porgs, who again show up in this movie briefly. When Rey goes back, you look like you're confused. Okay, you look like you weren't sure. So I was cool with all of that. Babu Frick and Dio were really fun. I just think that it introduced too many main characters that we're supposed to care about, like Zori Bliss, like Dominic Monaghan's air quotes dude. I don't know his name. Like Jana, who I'm like.
Who's that?
Jana is the former stormtrooper, whatever lady who kind of has a quasi romance thing going, starting with Finn.
Oh yeah.
And that character was a big nothing.
Yeah.
I'm 36, so I feel like an old fogey using this word, but it felt like a big nothing burger to me. She was fine. I think you didn't really need her there for really any reason whatsoever, other than to give Finn another love interest that's not really going to go anywhere, like Rey in the first
Maybe they're
movie,
gonna show
like
up
Rose.
in the next movies.
What next movies? We don't know when those are. And did you read that as Janna being possibly Lando's daughter? Like, what was that supposed to be?
Yeah.
Is that what they're saying? Because also, on one hand, I'm like, well, if that's the case, then just say it. Don't make us be like, what? What's that mean? And secondly,
maybe she doesn't know, but he does.
Secondly, can we have more than 3 black people in these movies without having 2 of them be related? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's like, you're black, I'm black, we must be related. I'm like, let's just let it be. Nobody cares. Stop trying to tie everything together. It's fine. I didn't think we really needed that. Like, that was the thing that was so fucked up. When Force Awakens came out, people were like, Ben, John Boyega's playing him. Is he Mace Windu's kid or Orlando Calrissian's kid? I'm like, how about he's just another black guy? Jesus. Just like, that's, I mean, it says a lot about how white these movies are, that people are like, it must be related to one of the other 2 black guys we met.
Well, I like that, though, that they're trying to be more diverse.
No, I like that, but don't connect them all where, like, there's one black family in the galaxy. I did find it weird that there seemed to be women and people of color in the First Order in this movie, which I didn't like, because I always thought the First Order being mostly white European men, I thought that made a lot more sense, because it's supposed to be kind of a white supremacist, like Nazi kind of thing, which is why they all look like Domhnall Gleeson or Peter Cushing and things like that. So it felt weird. Like, I noticed there were some women and or women of color in the First Order, and I was like, I don't know, you're messing with my
There's women and
metaphors.
And people of color in the Trump.
There
the
are
Trump supporters
that's true.
too, so.
Which I pointed. I want to say this. I make sure I say this on mic. The whole Exegol Sith thing. I felt as like I leaned over to you during the movie. I was like, it's like a Trump rally up in here. So we're running out of time. We have a few minutes here. So there were a lot of cameos for a lot of the Jedi. I pointed out to you during Rey's big like final showdown with Palpatine. That was Luke and Mace Windu and Qui-Gon and Ahsoka and Kanan Jarrus, aka Freddie Prinze Jr.
Trivia confirmed all this.
A lot of that. Anakin, and even Ayla Secura and Luminara Unduli. A couple of female.
McGregor too?
Obi-Wan, both Obi-Wans. Yeah, both Obi-Wans were in there. So I obviously loved all of that shit.
Any of those people.
Well, there was a lot happening there. Again, when I go on Monday to see it again, I'm going to be like listening for all that shit. Of course, we talked about the Han Solo cameo. Luke has a cameo briefly with Rey, which we knew we was going to have that. Luke and Leia training.
That was cool.
That was awesome seeing.
I still think it was Billy Lord.
It might have been. It might.
They
I
didn't
mean,
say
it would have made sense. She would have been around the right age for Leia at that time period. The way that they made Leia look, it looked like it was supposed to be soon. Well, no, it looked like it was supposed to be set soon after Return of the Jedi. Like, like a couple years after that, which means Leia probably would have been late 20s, which is what Billy Lord is. So
Mark
body
looked like he
wise
was,
and frame wise and face wise,
put in there, and for when he was from the movies, and then Princess Leia, she looked more tangible.
I can see that.
That's why I was like, and it also looked like Billy Lord.
Yeah, it could. I mean, it's her daughter, so you put her in the body. Billy Lord was on set and everything, and obviously it looks like Carrie Fisher. You put her have her be the body double, and then just tweak the face a little to make it look more like Carrie Fisher and less like Billy Lord, and you're good. I really liked her lightsaber, and I love the fact that Rey had Luke's saber and Leia's saber, which leans into the whole finale scene with her being a Skywalker and their spirits appearing to her. That was all great. I'm gonna cry right now talking about it. I got emotional during that moment. There was a Leia moment when she passed away, and then that moment there, I think maybe another during the finale with all the voices where I got emotional.
What about the scene with the 2 lightsabers and then fighting Emperor Palpatine?
That was great. That was just badass.
That was just
really
cool.
That was goosebumps. That wasn't tears.
She died for that.
She did. She died, and Ben Solo sacrificed himself, which, good. That's the right choice to make. I would sacrifice myself for Daisy Ridley, too. So, is there anything, did you think this movie killed enough people? Enough of the main characters, considering it's like the big stakes of the big finale. Do you think enough major characters died in this movie, or did you think did the stakes feel real enough
Weren't
or
there
high
3
enough?
people that died?
Well, I mean, most Star Wars movies kill like at least 2 to 3 slightly major characters. I mean, here we lost Leia and Ben and Hux, I guess. Did you think?
And Emperor Palpatine again.
Oh yeah. Well, we barely got him back, so that's fine. He went back to where he belongs. So did it feel too similar to Return of the Jedi in any respect? Because there are some similarities to this movie, but I feel like it's kind of in a class on its own in a lot of ways.
I mean, I knew something was going on with Rey with her Palpatine when she could do the lightning bolts through her fingers.
Oh my God, we got to talk about that real fast before we sign off. What did you think about the fact that we almost thought Chewbacca got killed? I kind of almost wished it was a badass. Like I was relieved to see that he was alive, but I was also like, it felt like a little bit of a cop out too. Like I love Chewie, I don't want him to die, but it's also like that would have been a really impactful moment. But and then I feel like it would have been hard for the audience to stick with Rey if she killed Chewbacca.
That's true.
And I feel like we would have been like, fuck Rey then. Chewie is very beloved in the Star Wars fan community, which is why Peter Mayhew's passing was so difficult for a lot of Star Wars fans in general, because he's been such a major part of the franchise. So what were your thoughts about this in comparison to Return of the Jedi, and as in generally as a finale, as we kind of winding down, because it's 11:28 and we're about to watch SNL?
I think that overall it did well, and I'm glad that she didn't kill Chewie, because that was one as her character, she doesn't want to kill anybody. That's what makes her good.
That tug of war with the ship with Kylo Ren.
Yeah, that was really cool.
That was really cool. It's kind of okay. It's cool.
When you're like, wow,
it's cool if you're into it, but if you're not into it, you're like, this is fucking goofy as shit. Two actors standing in a field with their hands out, which is like, it makes me think of Revenge of the Sith with Obi-Wan and Anakin being like, ugh, with their hands in front of each other, with making their pooping faces. So no, but I love that scene because I'm obviously into it. So, any other thoughts on any other thoughts on the movie in general? What do we want to see next in the Star Wars movies?
I want to see Rey again.
You want to see more Rey?
I do.
As the main character or as a supporting character for other people?
Maybe a supporting character, but I do like Rey, and I hope that she stays. And we've
Depends
had
how Daisy Ridley's career goes.
We've had the Luke Skywalker for 6 movies. Why can't we have Rey for a little bit more?
Well, I mean, we had 3 movies, and then we had like a 20-something year break, though.
But that's
30-year break.
Well, that's not that. We can't include that because that was owned by a different people.
Wait, what?
What?
What do you mean?
A lot of things have happened with Star Wars. It's had a lot of transition periods.
You mean when it was just Fox before Disney purchased it?
And I think that, and Poe coming back and Finn coming back, that would be fun. And who knows, maybe the Jana, she's going to be doing something different. And
shit.
So,
right.
I thought it was good. It was fun.
In general, I think we both really like the Rise of Skywalker. I have some issues with it because I'm a hardcore Star Wars person, and I hold the franchise to a very high standard. But I think we want to see this movie remain impactful on the saga, no matter what they do next, whether it's another film, another show, like whatever film they do. I think we want to see. If it's set after this, I think we want to see the effects of what happens in this movie take place. Is that kind of the general thing I'm hearing from you? In addition to having, but you want to see what happens next, like how the galaxy changes based on what happens here. And in relation to my whole thing about balance, I don't think we quite get like the putting to bed of the Jedi and the Sith, but the fact that the Sith are now completely dead. Even the Jedi, like Rey goes back to Tatooine, spoilers, as the whole last hour has been, goes back to Tatooine, the Lars homestead, in fact, and buries both Leia and Luke's sabers, kind of putting to bed the Jedi to me, and then emerges with a yellow saber. So it seems like it is kind of a new era of Force users, maybe not quite extreme as Jedi or Sith. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think that was...
And I think that's what we want to see, right?
They're trying to have balance, that she's both good and bad, and her lightsaber.
It's your internal balance, like Carrie was saying on that episode last time.
Yeah, and it's a pretty cool lightsabers, but I think that's how it is, and it was pretty prophetic that she went to Tatooine, even though it's weird she didn't go to Naboo, where Princess Leia and where
Naboo wasn't Princess Leia. Naboo was Padme.
Where was Princess Leia?
Alderaan. It doesn't exist anymore. It got
that's true.
in The New Hope.
Okay, you can edit that out.
No, but Tatooine was where we started this whole story, really, in kind of A New Hope. So that makes sense. It's kind of goes full circle again, which is something that the prequels also did because Revenge of the Sith ended on Tatooine at the Lars homestead with the binary sunset. So even in that way, it's kind of like retreading the same thing that we've seen before. So I think go see Rise of Skywalker. Is it the best Star Wars movie? No. Is it the worst Star Wars movie? No. So, it's a satisfying conclusion. Not quite as good as I would prefer, but I good enough for Kai to be better than Force Awakens, at least. So
It is true.
But we both still stand by Last Jedi, so just bear that in mind when you hear our opinions. So, any other final thoughts, Kai?
No, go see it and know that it's kind of it's more dark than the other.
Yeah, don't take
other
your
one.
small children to it. We didn't. So, thank you so much, Kai, for coming back to the podcast and rounding out this Star Wars trilogy. I think we're supposed to do a commentary track for the next episode. Are we still doing that? Are you available?
Check my calendar.
Oh, well, I know where you live, so.
It's true. But it was a pleasure to be on the show, as always, to close out the Star Wars series.
And
Thanks for having me.
of course. And we're doing as I mentioned, we're doing the Harry Potter films next year from March till October, I think. And
Ooh, creepy.
dun, dun, dun. And Kai will definitely be a part of that. I think we have some idea which one we were going to talk about, but we won't reveal it now in case that changes
that's right.
and stuff. But yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week with another episode with Kai.
Okay, bye.
If you're interested in joining me on the show to chat about one of your favorite films, head on over to crookedtable.com/guest. Or you can consider supporting the show at patreon.com/crookedtable. Of course, you can always find more podcasts, reviews, videos, and other movie-related goodies over at crookedtable.com. Until next time, this has been the Crooked Table Podcast, and I've been Rob.
This has been a production of crookedtable.com. All rights reserved.
CROOKED.